Okay. Okay, but you are controlling the session, is it, Hafiza?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
so yeah, I hope that you can record the session, inshallah.
Oh, go, go.
Thank you, Hafiza.
Welcome, welcome.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everyone. So thank you for attending today's questionnaire development workshop. Okay, inshallah, we are going to start this session with Kitab Al-Fatihah. Okay, let's just begin with we have some interactive session. Yeah, we have postgraduate students here, and also lecturers as well. I think Farah, Shidot, Anna, hi, morning, Dr. Siti.
Morning, Dr. Is.
Selamat morning. Ya, otak-otak ada kat sini who else? Okay, so I hope people will keep coming, inshallah. Okay, just wondering, how many foreign students are here so that, yeah, I can tailor my presentation, maximizing the use of English. Okay, Rania Amin Nabawi, not Azila, you're foreigner. Okay. Kinzam, I assume that you are from China, am I right? Kinzam, are you there? Kinzam, can you hear me? Kinzam, okay. Nur Azila, where are you from?
Sorry, I'm Malaysia. I again. Sorry.
Oh, okay, all right, no problem. Rania El Menabawi, you are from? May I know where you're from? Rania, are you there, Rania? Okay. Uh, so inshallah, I'm gonna start in just a little bit moment. So I'm gonna share my screen. Hafiza, I think the recording has yet to start. I'm not sure whether you have started or not. Hopefully you can initiate the recording session. So I'm going to share my video now. Share PowerPoint. Share. Okay, I hope uh, my PowerPoint slide is visible to your screen right now.
Just
Okay, so today I'm going to present on how you're going to develop effective framework and questionnaire. So yes, at this stage, I am hoping that many of you have already, have already have a topic in mind with a proper research problem, with a proper problem statement, and also research objective and research questions. Okay, so when you have the things in mind in what you plan to do for your PhD or MSc research, only then you can know what kind of framework that you are going to propose for your research. So in this sense, you also need to know what is the underlying theory, what is the paradigm that you are going to refer when you are drawing this framework. All right, so this is just my profile. Um, Actually, this you can obtain this slide later on. Okay, you can obtain this slide later on. I will give you a Google site address in which you can view my website later on, and you click the link. I will provide you the link for you to watch this video recording session, and also for you to download this slide. So no worries. So you can follow my publication using this link. Okay, so when I'm talking about this, what you call it, these websites, Okay, as a postgraduate student, you need to make yourself visible, okay? You need to make yourself, how to say, to enroll in communities that are related to researchers, PhD students as well. Okay, excuse me for a while. I need to open my Zoom app. Okay, Zoom it. Where's my Zoom it app? Oh no. Okay, I usually use this app if I want to highlight something on the screen. So let's say if you have a DRP online, so it's good for you to have this kind of app. Okay, sorry, I should prepare this earlier. Okay, where's my installer? Zoom it. Yeah, this one. Okay. So when I use this app, actually I can scribble on the screen. I can scribble, I can write, okay, on the screen. So when I talk about ResearchGate, it is actually something like a social media platform for researchers. Think of it something like, it's not like Facebook, it's more like LinkedIn, but actually you are sharing your research. And there is also a specific section where you can ask Q&A. You can look at certain FAQ or frequently asked questions. Usually PhD students or even lecturers, when they have questions about statistics, about research method, about certain type of analysis that they don't understand. Even me myself, during my PhD, when I have so many questions that my supervisor may have no clue about, then I refer to ResearchGate. I post my questions on ResearchGate. So this is where you can follow people. And when you have publications, you can also make sure people follow you. Okay, so it's important for you to have a ResearchGate account. Okay, and you can also view my publication in Scopus and Web of Science. Okay, at the moment, they are no longer Publons. Publons. Previously, there was this site called Publons. It is owned by Clarivate, which owns the Web of Science database. So remember why Scopus and Web of Science are important? Because, okay, IPSIS, the postgraduate department of UiTM, has made it compulsory for you to publish papers that are indexed in these two databases. Okay, Scopus and Publons, they are not full text publisher. No, they are not publisher. They are just an indexing body. Indexing body means they just highlight and pinpoint the information about your article, and they can process your bibliometric data. What is bibliometric data? It means your citation, what is your H index, what is your academic, what do you call that? What is your scholarly achievement in terms of, how many people view your papers, cite your papers. So these Scopus and Web of Science are actually something like gold standard in the academic publishing world. So for a PhD scholar, when you wanted to refer to articles, let's say you wanted to write your LR or find a research problem. So how do you know that the article you are referring, are they of high quality or not? So you need to check whether those articles are indexed in Scopus or Web of Science. A good article is usually indexed in these two indexing bodies, Scopus and Web of Science. And usually you shall know that that publishers which publish these articles, they are most likely, come from several sources. If you ever heard about what Elsevier, okay, this is the biggest publisher in the world. You can obtain articles by using easy access at UiTM. You go to our library online portal, followed by Emerald. Okay, these two can be viewed, can be accessed using your easy access, what I call that? Easy access portal by using PITA or UiTM library, UiTM library gateway. No problem. But then we also have what we call as other publishers that are highly reputable, but actually they are not subscribed by UiTM. For example, Springer, followed by Taylor, and Francis. Sometimes we call it as root H. And we also have Sage. We also have Wiley. We also have in their science. What else? In United States, they call it JSTOR, something like this. Okay. What else do we have? A lot, quite a lot. These are not open access, meaning that there needs to be a paywall. It means that you need to access this through institutional subscription. Okay, so these are just some tips in order for you to cite the right article. Okay, because if you don't cite article that are of good quality, which are indexed in these two databases, so when you submit to a good journals, usually the reviewer, the editor will questions. And the worst thing is they can reject your paper. Okay, so remember articles, there are so many articles in the world, millions of them, in fact. And remember, predatory publishers are on the rise. Predatory means they are more interested in your pocket, in your money. They're more focused, they like your money more than than doing things right for contributing to the theory, to advancing the literature, to help improve our current understanding of scientific phenomena. They are not interested in that. They are just interested in making money. So most predatory journals are open, purely open access, but not all open access are bad. Some of them are good, like Frontiers. MDPI is also good. Okay, you can also follow my profile in Google Scholar. Okay, you just type my full name in Google Scholar and you can easily find my article there. But if you wanted to refer to my articles that you can download for free, then you go to my research kit. Okay, so don't forget to cite my article if you find them useful. All right, so enough about myself. I'm going to go to the next slide. So don't worry so much about, you know, about these notes, about the content that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share this URL later on, so you can have a look at my notes, my tutorials. I have prepared many videos for researchers, for postgraduate students to learn about SPSS. Okay, so as a preamble, so I hope that all of the participants here, when you attend my workshop here, I would like to let you know that my research background is actually quantitative, quantitative survey using primary data. What is primary data? Primary data is actually the fresh data that you obtain from observation of people rather than data that has already been compiled and published by other sources. Okay, what does it mean by secondary data? Okay, secondary data means like statistics that have been published elsewhere. For example, if you do finance, you go to annual report, you can see many data, right? In terms of, the ROI, okay, the bottom line, the revenue, all those financial ratios. If you are doing economy, we are talking about the numbers produced by Bank Negara Malaysia or the Malaysia Monetary Agency. Yeah? For example, employment rate. Yeah? For example, our balance of trade. Yeah? For example, we have GDP. Yeah? Those are what we call as hard data. Okay, so I'm not dealing with this kind of data. So for those who are doing economics, finance, okay, I'm not sure if this workshop is suitable for you because most of your research design is based on panel data, is based on a trend across a period of time. You may using different software like eViews, right? A totally different paradigm. Okay, so my research paradigm is the one whose research design is focused on correlational research design. Okay, correlational research design. Correlational research design means when you are conducting your research, okay, you are using questionnaires. And these questionnaires are not all open-ended. Majority of them are closed-ended. And you are using manifest variables or questions. So these questions eventually will make up, will form manifest variables, or what we call items. And later on, these items will be aggregated into something what we call as latent variable. So I hope everyone can, okay, I hope that everyone can take note of this. Okay, so yeah, there are also finance students who are interested to do financial behavior, something like financial literacy, intention to, I mean, like to put your retirement savings on private investment scheme, for example. So this can be related as well. So please bear in mind that, okay, my workshop here is focused on quantitative research that is based on primary data survey questionnaire. So let's begin with, what does it mean by a survey instrument or questionnaire? Okay, you might heard about the word instrument. What are instrument? Why do we use the word instrument? Because in social science, okay, you always heard about the term scientist, right? So back when we were childhood, okay, what do we have in mind when we think about scientists? We always think about people wearing a lab coat, and they are dealing with lab apparatus, can, in the lab environment. Okay, but then we are not science and technology students. We are business. We have our background in business, regardless of whether you are marketing, whether you are in human resource. Okay, so actually we are dealing with human beings, right? The human beings are our respondent. So we need to, we need to ask them questions. So in the end, these questions themselves, the items that are represented in the questionnaire, those are your instrument. Okay, so that is the word instrument. So in this sense, a survey instrument is a set of closed-ended or open-ended questions for collecting information to describe, compare, or explain an event, phenomenon, or situation of a particular target group. So remember, there is an important word, phenomenon. Okay, phenomenon is actually what is the core event of your study? What is your study all about? What is the issue situation of your study? So phenomenon is very important, right? Because that will form your problem statement. Right? That will form your problem statement. And which variable that is related to your problem statement? Is it IV? Is it your independent variable? Is it your mediating, moderating, or is it dependent? Anyone? Okay, your problem statement should focus on the dependent variable, because during Viva, this is among the favorite question among the examiners. Just wanted to test your knowledge, okay? The problem statement should focus on the dependent variable, and this dependent variable must be related to the phenomenon at hand. What is the problem that your study is concerned about? Is it about turnover? Is it about satisfaction? Is it about, people are less inclined to use this kind of services, for example? So in this survey questionnaire, the kind of information that you will be asking will include the knowledge, attitude, behaviors, or the social demographic characteristics. Usually for social demographic characteristics, these are usually are being asked in the demographic section of the questionnaire, which you separate from another section that will focus on the latent variables. Okay, now what is latent variable? What is latent variable? Okay, this is what differentiate, marketing, HR research from economics or finance type of research, because econometrics, when you go to finance, you are looking at hard data, secondary data. But we talk about latent variable, usually it deals with primary data. It usually deals with a psychological concept that is hard, is very subjective, but somehow you wanted to make sure that it is concrete and it can be, it can be interpreted statistically. Okay, what does it mean here? It is not directly observed, but are rather inferred from other variables that are observed directly. Okay, for example, how you wanted to say someone is healthy? Okay, so are you just going to measure blood pressure or something? Okay, those are things that are being done by clinical studies, but all of us are not doing clinical studies. We are not going to have people, having to deal with all this medical equipment. No, we are asking them questions. So how are you going to measure their performance? For example, job performance. Are you expecting, do you have to go to the company and ask the HR manager subjectively how his subordinates are performing? No. Okay, you need to have indicators. You need to have a multiple indicators that actually representing performance. Okay, for example, maybe the questions will read that I perform my duties on time, for example. Okay, I am able to complete the task according to the work description. For example, I am able to achieve the designated sales target for this year. For example, those are what we call as manifest variables. Okay, so these are just an illustration on what does it mean by latent variable. Because latent variable is something that cannot stand alone on its own. You cannot say stress. What represents stress, right? There needs to have many statements that can represent stress. Stress cannot develop on its own, cannot be measured on its own. Okay, so there needs to be multiple items. Okay, so for advanced statistics, okay, usually like if you are using SPSS, usually a latent variable has around 3 to 7. Usually the optimal one has 3 to 7 items. But in advanced statistics, okay, some experts can say even one item. A construct can be represented only by one item or maybe 3 items if you are using SEM. Okay, no problem. But the optimal one is around 3 to 7. Okay, I think more than 7, that will be too much. And you have the risk of cross-loading when you run your validity test. Okay, now, close-ended and open-ended is easy. Close-ended means, okay, you're asking questionnaire where you give Likert scale. It means that the answer is predefined, whether you agree or disagree. To what extent you agree, what extent you disagree. Answer from a scale to 1 to 7 or from 1 to 5. That is close-ended. It means that, okay, it has less information, but the information is highly objective. Okay, what contradictory open-ended is dealing with subjective data. Of course, the data is rich. Something like when you provide in your questionnaire, for example, you ask, for example, provide your comments or room for improvement. And then suddenly these respondents, they write an essay, right? So how you wanted to codify, analyze, it is rich with information, but okay, at the same time, difficult to codify, difficult to analyze, and difficult to objectify those kind of subjective information. But somehow, it managed to capture information that is traditionally unreported, meaning that if you don't ask them in terms of open-ended, then they will not be likely to inform you. So this can be, an advantage of open-ended questions. But in most cases, researchers or students, they don't even bother to process these open-ended questions because understood that, many of us are doing quantitative-based research, which do not need for you to analyze open-ended questions, open-ended information. Okay, so now how do you want to administer your survey? Okay, because of the pandemic, because of the availability of online questionnaires that can be easily used, that are free, right? Like Google Form, like SurveyMonkey. There are also, some services that offer, professional services like Qualtrics. I think in US, Australia, they provide this Qualtrics software, which are used by most researchers from overseas, but they can be expensive. So self-administered means, okay, so whether in person or through email or through WhatsApp, meaning that the questionnaire is being given to the respondent and the respondent has to answer by themselves. That is what it meant by self-administered. Okay, so it also apply also to telephone interviews as well, but not many of us are doing actually telephone interviews. That can take time, and it's not advisable. It's not advisable. Typically, students they use structured questionnaires either through face-to-face or through Google Forms. Okay, Google Form has its own disadvantages. Why? Because later I will show. Later I will tell you this. Okay, later on. Okay, so these are the advantage and disadvantages. Okay, so when you personally administer the questionnaire, this is what I did during my PhD. Okay, the best thing is that you can establish rapport and motivate respondents. Okay, so it means that you are meeting the respondent face to face, and well, of course, when you are meeting a person face to face, you usually have that kind of you know you smile and you have some courtesy talk, and you can easily influence the respondent to answer sincerely rather than online. When you don't see, you don't hear. Okay, you don't hear, especially in remote in remote distance communication, there are highly chances that the respondents cannot answer sincerely, or they cannot they won't feel that. Yeah, they feel that they are anonymous, but if they have any problems, if they need some clarity, it's difficult for you to help them. Okay, so this is the most what I call that the beneficial advantage of face-to-face personally administered questionnaire. You are on the spot to answer any ambiguities, meaning that if the respondents have problems, you can answer on the spot. You can assist them on the spot. Okay, this is the biggest advantage of using personally administered questionnaire. Okay, and of course, most likely that they will feel obligated, not to say obligated, most likely they will entertain your request, right, to answer the questionnaire, rather than if you give through email or WhatsApp. Most likely they are not seeing you face to face, and hence they don't feel the obligation, they don't feel the need to help you, rather than if you are meeting face to face. So what are the disadvantages? Okay, you know, sometimes when you are asking sensitive questions, or perhaps questions that, they can feel shy about answering, they know that, oh, for example, if you ask whether they are stingy or not, kedekut ke tidak, okay? So perhaps maybe he's in front of you, and maybe of course, he's stingy, but he doesn't want to declare that he's stingy. You understand me? Okay, that is what we call as social desirability bias. It means that, yeah, he had that kind of tendency to not become honest. A social desirability. You can Google this, bias. Okay. Sometimes, yeah, because that person wanted to cover his or her own face. So, yeah, maybe that person can, there be a certain bias. There might be a certain bias. And then the disadvantage, of course, it takes time and effort. You need to make an appointment, you need to make a soft call, you need to meet up, travel personally to meet the person. Okay, but trust me, it's rewarding. Okay, because like in most PhD theses that were conducted, 10 years ago, most of them are using personally admitted questionnaire. So when we are approaching in the social media age, okay, so people are using electronic questionnaire, and somehow, they are also biased as well, which I will explain later on. Okay, now let's go to mail questionnaire. Why do we use mail questionnaire? Okay, usually mail questionnaires are applicable to those who are targeting respondents who can be very difficult to reach geographically. For example, if you are doing strategic management, strategic marketing, entrepreneurship, in which you are dealing with SMEs, you are dealing with remote organization, whereby the unit of analysis are organization, groups, government agencies, which are dispersed, okay, which are dispersed. wide geographic location. I'm talking about wide geographic locations. Okay, so you need to use mail questionnaire. For example, if your respondents comprise of factories, manager factories, okay, it will cost you a lot if you wanted to travel. Okay, so that's why sometimes people use mail questionnaires. Yeah, it looks old-fashioned and obsolete. Okay, it looks old-fashioned, obsolete, but somehow can insert token gifts. Okay, you can put vouchers, for example, in the letter that you post, although that can cost a lot of money. Okay, and respondents can take more time to respond at their convenience. Okay, and usually when you give mail, they exist in hard copies. It's not like when you receive email, right? When you receive email, your inbox can be very, very full, right? Okay, it feels like a landfill. You keep on deleting, and deleting, right? Like us in UITM, we usually get like how many? 20, 30 emails every single day. And there are high chances that the respondents can accidentally delete your email. That can be very dangerous. So this is the advantage of mail questionnaire. But what are the main disadvantages? The response rate is always low. Of course, because when you give your mail, you need the respondent to return to you. Therefore, you need to put stamps. Jangan stamp 20 sen, right now how much? RM1. You need to put stamps. The best thing if you can prepare an envelope which already you write your address, return address, and then you attach your stamp. So that makes it easier for the respondent to just put their answers in the envelope and return back to you. But you have to make sure that your questionnaire is not that thick, or else, it might not be delivered, because couriers like Post Malaysia, they don't entertain envelopes that the size or the limit of weight exceeded a certain required weight. Okay. Oops. And then you can clarify questions because you are remote, you are in a remote location, and yeah, follow-up procedure for non-response are necessary. You have to always call the respondents to remind the respondent, because in mail questionnaires, there are people, managers, they have a lot of stack reports, stack to do things, and probably your questionnaires are stacked somewhere else. Di bawah timbunan, is under a stack of huge pile of documents. So there needs to be a follow-up. Why I always keep on minimizing the screen. Okay, now we look at electronic questionnaires. Here we are talking about emails, talking about Google Forms, all those electronic questionnaire. Of course, it's easy to administer, and I always get these requests from overseas, like in Portugal. They are asking for my responses. PhD students from all over the world. I have some involvement in answering their questionnaire as well. You can easily access specific target groups. Okay, of course, it's very expensive, fast delivery. Respondents can answer at their convenience. Okay, and automatic processing of answers. Automatic processing means that, by using Google Form, maybe if this person doesn't answer this question, perhaps they can jump into another section automatically. I think some other, electronic survey platform also offer that kind of, convenient, like SurveyMonkey, like Qualtrics. Okay, what are these disadvantages? Okay, all of us think that, sending questionnaire through Google Form is easy. People will answer. But somehow is that you need to remember that the person who is at the receiving end must be able to know how to use it. So there must be a computer literacy. Okay, so if you give the link through WhatsApp, what happens if you're giving this to people of veteran age, 60, 70, for example? Maybe they don't even know how to open the link, or if they don't even know how to answer. Okay, then there can be sampling issues. Okay, sampling issues means that how? So when you had your viva, the examiner asked you, okay, you in your thesis you mentioned you distribute your Google form, okay, through WhatsApp or through Facebook, okay. So how are you going to make sure that those who are answering are the right people that you are targeting? What are the inclusion criteria? What are the exclusion criteria? How can you make sure that the people answering are not that respondents' daughter, mother, uncle, auntie, nenek, atuk, right? So that can be issue as well. It means that when you are targeting your respondent through electronic questionnaire, you need to have inclusion criteria. Inclusion criteria means that, for example, if you are giving this questionnaire to managers, how are you sure that not the executive will answer, or perhaps people with the right position will answer? So there must be a screening questions in your Google form. It means that are you in the what are your position? For example, what is your income level? For example, if you wanted to study consumers who use luxury, what I call that, luxury design apparel, like Louis Vuitton, for example. Of course, you cannot give your questionnaire to B40, right? Can those who visit Star Hill, for example. So you need to have inclusion criteria. The respondent must be people who have income of, let's say, 8,000, 10,000 per month. Can. So how are you going to make sure that this electronic questionnaire can be targeted to this kind of people? That is always the questions of the examiners. Okay, and then high non-response. What does it mean by high non-response? It means that when the survey comes into the recipient's inbox, people usually ignore people are usually, they are very busy with their work. Like me, myself, when I have suddenly tons of emails coming in, and suddenly I saw this request to answer the questionnaire. What happened is that, you know, people can easily, be complacent. Not complacent means that uh, they have other priorities to you, and maybe they forgot. Maybe they wanted to answer, and somehow they shift the what I call that, the email to a folder. But later on they forgot. Huh? The next 6 months, when they open the folder, oh, I have this question I forgot to answer. Remember that? So that's why in most cases you keep on repeatedly send your survey request to that person, and suddenly the email server thinks that you are spamming. You are spamming the account. What happened is your account is blocked. That can be a problem, a high non-response, because an email is easy to read, it's easy to ignore, it's easy to delete. Okay, because people have a lot of work to do. And through emails, in your ITM itself, we receive a lot of emails every time. Okay, and then respondents might be willing to complete the survey, and people find invitations via email rude and offensive. They are easily deleted, or people can complain. All right, can we have a short break for a while? Maybe like 5 minutes. Is it okay? So that,
Doctor.
yeah, you can get some refreshment. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to see you, inshallah, in another, perhaps 7 minutes. Yeah. All right, I see you. So I hope all of you are prepared to continue where we left off. May I know if there are any of you who have previously attended this questionnaire workshop? Because I think I have conducted this like 4 or 5 times. Don't worry, I will come if you keep on joining, because I know that we need refresher. We need to refresh our knowledge, because yeah, most of the time we always tend to forget because of our job, because of our busy schedule. So it's good to see you back. Rajin hati. So, bila nak viva? Cik, bila nak viva? Good luck for you, insyaAllah. You can do it. Rosman, are you there? I thought I can nampak your email, but because of my busy schedule, I somehow maybe I overlook. So I think that email is about questionnaire validation. Yeah. So how is it going? I'm sorry for not being able to, to look into that. But when I saw your name, I suddenly remember that I have an overdue. I mean, like an overdue request from you. So is the questionnaire being finalized? All right. Okay, I apologize for being overlooking into your email. Okay, because of my duties, my responsibilities. Okay. So if we have everyone on board, again, thank you very much. I'm going to continue, inshallah. Sharing my screen. Where's my um all right, so now I'm going to continue what we recently left off. So like just mentioned earlier, we have learned about the pros and cons. Okay. Okay, very good, Rosman. It's nice to hear that. Inshallah, all the best to you. So we look at uh, low responses. Low responses is because through post or email, whereby sometimes the subject matter is not interested, it's not of interest to the respondents, and it might be too sensitive. Okay, these are the same information that I provided to you earlier. Okay, now let's look at the collection procedure. You have to be, you must need to convince that the identity of the respondents are anonymous. Okay, unless if you are doing a qualitative study. Okay, sorry, unless if you are doing a longitudinal study. Okay, longitudinal study is what? Longitudinal study means that the questionnaire will be delivered to people in more than once. It means that you have a 2 or 3 time pieces. Okay, most likely I've seen this being conducted by researchers in overseas and also perhaps in University Malaya. I've seen this. Okay, uh, if you are using a longitudinal approach, it means that you need to obtain the details of the respondents. You need to jot down the phone number of the respondents or the email so that you can follow up. Because you have no choice. It's a longitudinal study. It means that you need to approach the same respondents after 2 or 3 months after you approach them initially. So you need to communicate the assurance of confidentiality. All right. And if you are doing cross-sectional, like most of us are doing, of course, you are not answering the respondent's name or whatever. No identification needs to be submitted to you. You need to assure that. Okay, but somehow the descriptive information about their demographics are useful when you wanted to compare your respondents. So, how you're going to design a questionnaire? When I talk about design a questionnaire, okay, you really need to adapt rather than create your questionnaire on your own. Remember, you are not, how to say it, there are 2 types. When you talk about quantitative research, whether it's really exploratory or you wanted to confirm instruments or measures that have been done elsewhere. I'm sure that most of you are doing confirmatory rather than exploratory. Exploratory means you are developing new items. Okay, developing new items is very sophisticated. Is a very sophisticated endeavor. You need to conduct something like before you develop the questionnaire, there needs to be a different type of research method that allows you to to collect those kind of thematic information. This can be done through mixed method, qualitative inquiry, observational research. Okay, that is not covered here. I'm not teaching you qualitative, but I'm going to show you how are you going to adapt or adopt the right items that can be, that can be positioned as your questionnaire items. So before you finding the right questionnaire, you need to identify what are the variables involved. Before you identify your variable involved, you need to understand your research questions and research objectives. Okay, you are not developing your own questionnaire unless if you are doing a mixed method. Okay, so no, if you are doing entirely a questionnaire, sorry, a quantitative, purely quantitative research design through correlational research, your questionnaire cannot be developed from scratch. You have to adopt or adapt your questionnaire from existing sources. Remember, you are not creating your questionnaire out of nowhere and you create your own variable. For example, people are using customer satisfaction. Suddenly, when you see that, oh, your item has your item happiness. So why not we create a new variable, customer happiness or customer delight, for example. And you create your own wordings that are very different from those that represent customer satisfaction. And then when suddenly, for example, the examiner asks, you just mention that, oh, I create my own questions, can. So how, I mean, like, of course, the panels will be furious, because in research, in quantitative research, the items, the measurement, the instruments must be what? Must be established, content validated. Content validated means that they must be through proper establishment of the items from other prominent researchers. Because developing a questionnaire from scratch is not simple. You have to have a lot of multiple of study. Study 1, for example, focus group. Study 2, for example, you do validation, or you have another individualized, for example, individualized interviews. Later on, study 3, you do EFA. Means that you give a lot of questionnaires in order for you to confirm, not confirm, in order for you to examine and explore the factor structure of the questionnaire. Okay, and then study 4, you need to have some form of confirmatory, confirmatory results. So there are a lot of steps that are needed when you develop your questionnaire from scratch. But I am pretty sure that most of you are not involved in this type of technique because it is very, very time consuming, and there must be, there must be a proper way of doing it. So let's go to the next. So this is just some statistical, what we call as statistical knowledge that you should know. So when you do questionnaire-based study, you need to understand what kind of measurement that your instruments are subjected to. We have what we call as arrangement of the level of measurement. Okay, from nominal to ratio. The higher as it goes up, it means that the more precise and the more statistical power that kind of measurement possess compared to the lower one. So, for example, it's simple. When you talk about nominal, you are actually comparing something that is not essentially can be precise to compare. Okay? And probably it's not proper to compare at all statistically. For example, race, right? Malay, Chinese, Indians. There is no way you want to say that Malay is better than this race, or this ethnic is better than this ethnicity, for example. There's no way you can make that kind of conclusion. Same like male or female. You cannot say that, okay, female is better than male or the other way around. So those are what we talk about nominal. Those are nominal type of data. And then we have ordinal. Ordinal means that you can make some comparison, whether it's better than, greater than, longer than, taller than. These are comparison. You can compare what is better than, one has a high value than the other, but you cannot tell by how much. Understand me? You can say what is better than another, but cannot say precisely by how much. So that is ordinal. When you talk about interval, you can exactly tell how much a person is taller than the other, okay? But somehow you don't have an absolute zero. It means that you don't have a central point. You don't have the 0 point that can be used as a reference. So that is being covered by ratio. When we talk about ratio, you can see that, oh, ratio is 5 foot 10 inch tall, while Gregory is 5 foot 5 inches tall. When you say interval, well, you know ratio is taller than Gregory, but you cannot say how tall are both of them. You understand me? So of course, ratio is the best scale. But when you do questionnaire-based studies, you are actually doing this. Why? Because latent variables, remember I told you earlier, these are subjective measurements that is objectified. It means that you put some statistical value to it. There is no right numbers. If you want to say you are happy, you are smiling. So what is the percentage of happiness? 78%. It may look 78% to that person, but the other person may think that, oh, this is just 60%. So these are perceived, these are subjective perception, but somehow it is being codified into interval scale. But somehow it is not ratio scale, but then, any statistical outcome that involves interval scale items are still acceptable to run regression, to run advanced statistical analysis. So remember, most of your variables that you use, your construct, your latent variables, they are interval in nature. But of course, you can also use nominal. Some people, they use gender as moderator, for example. So that is, gender is nominal in scale. Okay, and maybe you wanted to compare people with different income levels. Okay, and maybe income levels can either be ratio if, let's say, you give an open-ended questions, how much ringgit do you earn every month? So maybe the person can write 10,465, for example, or 6,241. So it means that this is more accurate, right? But in most questionnaire, you will give ordinal scale. Ordinal means 2,000 to 4,000, can 4,000 to 6,000. These are not exactly ratio or interval. These are what we call as somehow as ordinal, because you don't have that much accuracy, because probably, the scale might end somewhere from above 10K, for example. So it's not as linear as interval. So this one has been clarified previously. So you can look at this, you can look at this type of statistical measures that can be performed using different types of measurement. Like I mentioned earlier, when you use interval, you can run a lot of analysis. You can look at standard deviation, variance, you can run correlation, and you can run regression. So nominal, you cannot run regression. When you do comparison, maybe you use chi-square rather than you use ANOVA, right? When you have interval, you can run a lot of statistical analysis using SPSS and also SEM. Okay, so let's look at the central tendency here. So what does it mean by being normal? Is like the distribution of your data looks something like this, okay? But in reality, in social science, it doesn't appear something like this, okay? In social science, if you use latent variables, it is mostly appear like this. It is negatively skewed. Okay, it means that most people, they are answering what? They're answering 4, 5, 3, okay? Most of the answers will appear something like this. But if in, but in clinical studies, or let's say, for example, in a classroom setting, okay, you look at the students in, for example, primary school, secondary school, it may look like this, right? The distribution. When we talk about tall, for example, maybe there are not many people who are very short, not many people who are very tall. Most of the students are within this range. Okay, this is what is represented through population. Okay, but in latent variables, we are talking about in latent variables. In most cases, you're gonna have something like this. So that's why in SPSS, most even most supervisors, they don't recommend you to run Kolmogorov Smirnov. If you ever heard this, it's very sensitive, because if you don't achieve this kind of normality distribution, then it considered your data is not normal. But that's not necessarily the truth. But in social science, most of the respondents will answer 3, 4, 5. So your data will be negatively skewed. So when you talk about normality, you don't have to look at that kind of test, Kolmogorov-Smirnov or KS. You can look at QQ plot. Okay, you can run skewness and courtesies in order for you to look at, the plus or minus 2. You look at the skewness and courtesies when you wanted to check the normality at the univariate level. Okay, I think statistics will not be covered too much, but this is just an introduction, so that you understand. Latent variable pattern will always look like this, so you don't worry. You can't really have this kind of perfect, distribution when we talk about, primary data that uses questionnaire survey in latent variables. Now, let's go to the important part. When suddenly, for example, you have already passed your DRP. So what's next? Yeah. What's next? So when you pass your DRP already, you need to start to think of how you wanted to design your questionnaire and also to adapt or adopt. So, okay. So it's better for you, even if when you have yet to go for your DRP, it's good for you to attach the instrument in the appendix, okay? This is important. You need to attach the instrument that you plan to adopt or adapt in your appendix so that the examiner will have an idea what is your variable all about. All right. So let's look back. Let's look at the measurement in terms of Likert scale. Remember, I told you earlier, interval. When you talk about interval scale, Likert scale is a form of an interval scale. So in this case, it is used to measure subjective psychometric properties, like satisfaction, commitment, stress. Yeah, it's very subjective, but somehow you wanted to make it easy to codify, to appear objective. Although it's subjective, you wanted to convert it into something objective so that you can measure it statistically. So in this sense, you wanted to measure the extent to which people agree with a series of statements about a topic. Okay, so you use a fixed choice response formats. All right, you need to have a two extreme. Usually it's agree or disagree. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. Ataupun frequent to never. There are a lot of anchors which I will show you right now. But for a Likert scale, there must be a linear continuum from the two extreme, from the bottom end to the another top end. There must be a consistent continuum between one polarized end to the another polarized end. So, some experts, they argue the Likert scale is not interval, it's actually ordinal. You don't have to worry about that. Panels will not ask about this because in social science, in business studies, people use Likert scale. Of course, there are researchers who say that, oh, it's ordinal. You can run questionnaire that is based on Likert scale, but somehow, these are already, it is normal, it is standard in the academia. For you to ask questions Likert skills that is categorized as interval. Because you have to remember, using ordinal scales, you cannot run regression if your DV is ordinal scale. So, you have to run logistic regression if it is yes or no. But if it's interval, then there's no problem. So that's why, experts, they regard these, latent variables that are measured using Likert scale as interval measured scale, which allows them to be analyzed statistically using regression, correlation, and so on. So what are the type of anchors that are normally used? For example, when you say about satisfaction, completely dissatisfied to completely satisfied. Some use the word extremely, right? Some use the word moderately in the middle, but on the safe side, I would recommend you use the word neither nor, okay? Neither agree nor disagree, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. Some use neutral, but somehow it means that, you know, you are undecided. Neutral means it's pretty much undecided. So this type of response, I think might not represent, the firm standing of the respondent. So I think this wording is much more suitable. Okay. All right. There are many different types of anchors, but you have to remember, if you adopt the questionnaire, katakan the original questionnaire is asking about satisfaction, very satisfied, to very satisfied. For example, can you change the word satisfied to agree to disagree? Cannot. You need to follow the original response that were proposed by the authors or the sources in which you cited the reference from. Okay, you need to follow the anchor that has been proposed in the original source. You can't change it arbitrarily according to your whims and whimsy. Same also like this response anchor. I doubt that these anchors are uh, are frequently used. Okay, you should refer to the original items that were developed by previous researchers. These are just the sample. You cannot put this on your own, and you cannot assign this on your own. You need to look back. You need to look back at the sources that you derive from. All right. Okay, so you can search Google for these sources if you wanted to complete list of response anchors. Like I mentioned, do not arbitrarily assign response anchors. And you need to refer to the original work who developed the skills and cite the researchers who developed these skills, because you are adapting it. You are actually adopting these skills from them. So even the anchoring, you also need to adopt a similar pattern of anchors. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, you cannot create your measures from scratch unless if you are willing to undertake the mixed method route, which is very, very, very challenging. Okay, so although you are saying that, oh, you are measuring this, you are doing this study in Malaysia for the first time. Previously, people did this in the Europe, in US. So you wanted to create new one. That does not justify. Okay, so whenever you develop a new construct, there must be a fundamental and qualitative approach involved. So this will take a lot of time, a lot of experts to guide you. And trust me, there are not many supervisors in UiTM which are, which did their PhD purely on a qualitative basis. Okay. So most researchers, especially here in UiTM, DPPS, they either adopt or adapt existing instruments. So a good practice is for you to, to search the email of the person or the guru or the, professor who developed the instrument. Okay, get their approval, get their consent, and perhaps you can get their assistance in terms of content validity. Okay, I've did that, and trust me, many of them are very helpful. Many of these overseas foreign academicians, they can be very helpful. But you need to provide an email, courtesy email for them. Okay, you need to check if the measure are copyrighted or licensed. Okay, some measurements are licensed. For example, like transformational leadership, the resilience, if you ever heard, the resilience, how to write it? Resilience. Okay, this resilience, I forgot the name. This resilience items, a measurement in which they have 3 dimensions. Okay, is actually licensed, so you cannot use it without proper permission. They even request you to pay license. For every questionnaire, they charge you. So please check, please check the sources. Are these instruments, are they licensed or not? Not all instruments are licensed, don't worry. Many of them are available, can be used freely. Many of them are not tied to any form of license. But you need to check first. It is a good practice for you to check. Okay, now let's look whether are you planning to adapt or adopt. So what's the difference between these two? Some researchers, they say that they adopt, but then there are a lot of changes that are made into the sentences. So the differences are here. When you adapt, the changes are quite substantial, yeah? The changes are quite substantial. Okay, so when you adopt, there are not many changes. The wordings can be very, very minimal, but the meaning stay intact. The meaning remains the same. Okay, when you adapt, okay, you need to follow the general design of another instrument, but add or remove items or substantially changes the content of each item. So the meaning of the item may be different or may carry different, different meaning for different contexts. So when you adopt, it's just a few modifications. But then it still stay true to the original conceptual definition of that variable. Okay, so that's why when you plan to adapt or adopt, you need to understand first. Okay, this is important, Operational definition. What is operational definition? Okay, operational definition means you need to define your variables of interest. Okay, what are the construct of variables that you use in your framework? So you need to contextualize. What does this variable means? I see many students, they just copy and paste the meaning of the variable without understanding that actually the variable should be explained within the context of your research. Let's say if you're doing in hospitality, hotel research. So I mean, when you wanted to define a variable, you need to put into context, into hospitality, into hotel context. For example, food service. If you are doing operation management research, for example, when you are doing, for example, in manufacturing, for example, and then the definition should be more contextualized towards manufacturing, towards IR 4.0. I mean that the definition itself can be modified to suit with the context of your research. Okay, so that will form your operational definition of your variables. When you wanted to adapt or adopt your questionnaire, you need to look at your definition, operational definition of your variable. Does the items fit or not with your definition? So when you adopt the instruments, okay, so you regardless of adopt or adapt, you need to do some study. Okay, what kind of study? You need to understand who developed the instrument, who validated the instrument, what are the other studies that have used the instrument. Okay, there are many types of models, instrument, inventory. Sometimes it's also called inventory, that are widely used. For example, the most easiest one are TPB, UTAUT, for example, TAM, Technology Acceptance Model, DOI, Diffusion of Innovation, Service Quality, and then you have Technological Readiness by Parasuraman. So these are samples of inventory, but you need to know the original people who created it. Let's say, for example, Technology Readiness Index. I think that was developed in 2005, for example. You have no, that was 17 years ago. So you need to look at the recent research. What kind of improvements they have been made to that questionnaire? You look at other people who also adapt that kind of questionnaire. You look at the, you look at the measurement, you look at the items, the wordings. have they changed so much as compared to the original one created by Parasuraman? For example, technological readiness. Okay, these are sample of how you want to write an adapted instrument. Okay, don't worry, you're gonna read this later from my slide. Okay, now let's look at adapted instrument. Okay, so in this case, adapted means minimal changes. Okay, so you report the same information in the instrument section, but you should also include what changes were made to the instrument and why. Okay, these are the sample of adapted instruments. Okay, I'm sorry, adapted, you actually involve, substantive revision to the wordings of the items. Okay, these are also the sample of adapted instruments. Okay. All right, so when you already understand what variables that you need to adapt your measurements from, so you need to confirm your key variables that need to be operationalized. Okay, like I mentioned before, okay, instruments are usually disclosed by the author together with the loadings. Okay, so this is where you need to have some statistical knowledge. Get yourself some books, especially book by Joseph Hare, Multivariate Analysis. Okay, you need to also get the book from, for example, from Field, ND Field, SPSS. That's good. You also learn some statistic, bias, normality. Get that book, Andrew Hayes. Uh, I think I can write here. Of course, you find the book by Joseph Hare. Now, the name is Multivariate Analysis. Okay. And then you also get the book by Andrew Hayes, more on SPSS. And then you get also the book by, I think, Timothy Kiefer. This one is around SEM, structural equation modeling. I think I have this book in my office. I don't know if my webcam can exactly show this. Why my okay? If you see this, oh no, it automatically erase everything that is not recognized my face. So it's difficult for me to show you here unless if I um, unless if I how to say unless if I can change the setting. If I can change my video setting, wait for a while. Mhm. Video setting, change my background, change virtual background, none. All right. So get this book by Andrew Hayes. Okay. Okay, get this book by Andrew Hayes. If you can't find it in any of the bookstore here, I think University Malaya Library should have this by Andy Field, Andrew Hayes by Andy Field. Discovering Statistics using IBM SPSS, because this book have a lot of basic statistical knowledge that you need to understand, especially assumption when you run regression. I know many of us today, they are compelled to use second generation analysis like SEM. You are excited, but few know the basics of normality, linearity, bias, univariate and multivariate normality, the issue of homoscedasticity, what are the assumptions to run regression. You have to know SEM has the same foundation. It is based on the concept that the assumption of regression needs to be observed as well. I'm talking about linearity, normality, homoscedasticity, independence of observation. We need to understand the differences through ANOVA, t-test. Those are the basics. If you cannot capture the basics, then you cannot go straight to SEM. So study the basics of statistics by reading this book. Okay, and then a little bit advanced, you need to know about multivariate data analysis. So get this book, Multivariate Data Analysis by Joseph Hare. If you notice, okay, many experts, they are referring to Hare. Many of our local experts in Malaysia, talk about Prof. Ramaya, okay, most of them are referring to Joseph Hare, okay, when we talk about dealing with multivariate data analysis. And when you wanted to learn about hierarchical regression, a little bit about SEM, okay, then you can go to this book, Timothy Keefe, Multiple Regression and Beyond. Okay, wait for a while. I'm going to get this book if you are interested in PLS. Okay, I think this book is sold in many places in Malaysia. Partial least square, okay, structural equation modeling or PLS-SEM, which is written by Prof. Ramaya and his colleagues. We're talking about Jackie, Francis, Hiram, and Mumtaz. Okay, I always follow their workshops. I think, when I learned Smart PLS, it took me 3 classes for me to really understand the concept of SEM. So you have to remember, PhD is not it's not your end journey. So whatever it is, you need to still continue learning even after you finish your PhD, because my PhD, I did SPSS, but then the criteria for you to publish right now, they need more. Journal editors require sophisticated second generation, SEM modeling. So I learned myself using SEM, and then, I managed to publish in good journals. So, yeah, recently we have a student. He's a good student. Okay, his supervisor is also my supervisor. Okay, my supervisor is a very good supervisor. It's just that, like the generations of the old supervisors for researchers who are veteran in this industry, they during their era they use SPSS, but when we come to this new era, many people across universities in Malaysia already use SEM. So it's unfortunate that, the student passed the Viva, but then the panel keep insisting, the external examiner, use SEM. You need to revise your data, okay? All right, so what happened is that, it is quite a major correction, luckily without revival. So I'm telling you early at this stage, you need to consider using SEM. But before using SEM, you need to understand SPSS too, okay? There's no purpose you use SEM without understanding the basic of SPSS, because for running, for you to check your bias, for you to check your normality, for you to understand the basic statistic, the standard deviation, standardized, what does it mean by standardized scores, what does it mean by multicollinearity, how you wanted to do non-response bias, how are you going to run Harman one-factor test. Those cannot be tested using SEM. Those can only be tested using SPSS. And also, if you are doing experimental study, they use SPSS. You need to know, we come from the business background. We are not clinical studies. People from health sciences, for example, they don't care about SEM because their nature of study is different, clinical. That's why they still use SPSS. Similar also to clinical psychology. Okay, they use SPSS, they don't use SEM, but for business-related discipline, Yeah, SEM is the current trend right now. So don't worry, I'm sure that the student who had to have his thesis, for major correction, I know he's a brilliant student. I'm sure that sooner or later he will able to handle this, inshallah. Okay, so that's why as a student, you need to know that, yeah, you need to have many avenues for you to learn. You cannot expect your supervisor to teach you A to Z, because during my PhD, I always look for opportunity. I save my money to go to workshop. Yeah. For example, you can go for Ramaya workshop, right? You join Facebook groups like doctorate support group in Facebook, and you have SEM, SEM group. I forgot the name, SEM group. Yeah. This SEM group is being organized by this Ramaya and his colleagues, talking about Ramaya, Jackie, Francis, Hiram, Mumtaz. Okay, yeah, you need to understand what does it mean by CR, composite reliability, AVE. Okay, you need to know the statistics, because yeah, when you wanted to adopt instrument, you need to know whether it's reliable or not. Okay, whether that kind of loading, is it acceptable or not. So in this sense, yeah, you need to search appropriately. You do some backward and forward referencing. Okay, I think my pointer is not working. Allow me for a second. What? All right, my pointer is working again. Okay, so you need to have the information skills, okay? You need to have the information skills. This is what we call as backward and forward referencing. What does it mean by backward referencing? Backward referencing refers to when you are looking at references that are available in the article. Previously, what kind of sources, who are the researchers whom the article was referring to? That is backward. Forward referencing, you are looking at the citations of the article. Who is actually citing that article? Okay, you think that, 2021 is recent, or 2022 is recent, but perhaps have you checked if perhaps there are also other articles that develop the work of this author, which is, you think that this is a recent one? Suddenly you find that, there is another article, 2022, that is more recent. So you need to have that information skill of backward and forward referencing. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, you need to look for reputable and indexed journals. Okay, I'm sure PITA or our library always conduct what we call as uh, training. They conduct workshops, training. So you just go to this portal, easy access. Okay, so it's easy. You just why it doesn't automatically log in. All right. So you need to access it using here. Where is it? You go to online databases, okay? And you look for Scopus over here. This is Scopus, and this is Web of Science. Okay, previously I mentioned earlier about the two publishers which made their full text available to UITM. These are Emerald, you can find here. See Emerald inside? Emerald is dedicated mostly for social science and business. So this is among the best sources that you can find. And also Science Direct. Science Direct is another brand name for Elsevier. Elsevier is the publisher. Science Direct is the brand name for the particular full text database. All right. Taylor and Francis doesn't cover all, so that's why you need to have some alternative download option like Sci-Hub, which I'm going to show you later. So you need to check with Scopus or Web of Science. So you just click this another tab. So whenever you find your research on Google Scholar, if you are not sure, you need to look at Scopus, whether the article is reputable, indexed or not. All right. Other than that, you can go to Simago GR. Simago GR is not exactly owned by Scopus. It's a mirror of Scopus. It doesn't carry the latest information, but it is just a recompilation of bibliometric indicators that are actually retrieved or collected from scopers. Okay, so what you need to do is you compile all instrument in a structured table. Okay, remember, okay, you need to show to your supervisors what are the potential items that you're going to use. For example, yeah, this is the compilation of instruments. For example, this was performed by former student who has already graduated. So let's say she's doing on environmental concern. So is it sufficient if she finds an article, sorry, you find an article, and then when you read the items, you think, oh, this is suitable for me. I take this one. Okay, so that's not the right case. You need to keep on searching and compiling whatever items that are available or offered in the article. So for example, this needs to be, what I call it, adapted a little bit. For example, I'm worried about the worsening quality of environment in India. You cannot put India because your respondents are in Malaysia, for example. So you need to compile this, whether in a Word document, you print this, or you show this to your supervisor and try to ask for his or her feedback. Which instruments do relate with your operational definition? Not all of them are suitable. Right? Remember I told you earlier, operational definition. You need to check whether are these items fit with your operational definition. And those that are fit or relevant with your definition should be selected. All right. So I'm going to show you, for example, not example, sorry. I'm going to show you what does it mean by identify the originator. Okay, most often than not, how are you sure that this author are the one who created this? Is it true? Perhaps maybe this author adapted from somewhere else, maybe from the year 2012, and then tengok-tengok orang 2012 ni dia adapt daripada 2005. So this is where you need to apply backward referencing, because you cannot be sure that the article that you read, are you sure that these are the same authors who developed the items? Not necessarily. So you need to go back. You need to look back at the reference section. Which authors, which references do Go and Balaji 2016 refer to? 2012, you go back and check who is where does the item originates from? So this is where this slide come into the picture. Yeah, this one. So recognize the original author, make sure you find the right person. Okay. And also in journal article, you refer to the method section. If you wanted to know from which author or from which sources does the author of the article find these items, this measurement. So you refer to the method section, okay, and you perform the backward forward referencing. You examine the original source and who also cite the original source. Okay, for example, like I mentioned earlier about backward reference searching is, for example, you need to understand the development of the theory. What are the origins of the theory? Okay, it doesn't mean that, oh, if I wanted to do TPB, I need to also cite the TRA, theory of reason action. It doesn't mean like that. This is an example, right? This is an example of how Venkatesh came up with UTAP. UTAP means Unified Theory of Acceptance and Use of Technology. Okay, does this theory created from scratch? Did this theory was created from scratch? No, this theory is an evolution of previously developed theory. It started long time ago with Bandura, with Adzen, who came up with TRA, SLT. This LLT was being evolved into SCT or social cognitive theory. TRA was being refined into TPB, for example. And Venkatesh, he referred to these two theory to come out in the context of technology. Okay, intention to use, intention to use a certain new technology. So this is what we call as try to look at the development of theories as well. Doesn't mean that when you wanted to, when you wanted to write your LR, you need to explain all this. Not necessarily. You just need to give a brief explanation. How did the theory evolve over time? Okay, and then when you look at the instruments, okay, you also do some forward reference searching. Okay, what is forward reference searching? It means that if the instruments were developed in 2012, are you sure that there are no other improvements made to the original instruments? It's already 2022. 10 years later, this was made 10 years ago. So how to deal about this? So what you need to do is you go, for example, the easy way is to go to Google Scholar Search, okay? Of course, this was in 2012. How many? 4,189. Okay, hafalnya 4,000. Now, what if I do a Google search now? Just like the Van Kardesh, you talk to MIS quarterly. How many? Can you see this? Last time it was 4K plus, right? Citation. Sekarang berapa? Can you see that clearly? 11880. Oh, ada 880, 11880. Trust me, tomorrow the number will keep on increasing. So you know that this theory is actually evolving, but many people are adapting the measurement from this paper. And hence, it is wise if you can try to search within the context of Malaysia, within this one is not already latest because this slide was developed like 3 years ago. At that time, it's okay, but you need to look at, latest model and what is there any major amendments done? Not to say that the original items are wrong. No, they can be used. The original items remain intact. The original items remain intact. This one is just for you to check if perhaps there are certain interesting wordings, interesting statements that have been added. I hear that some of you might want to ask any questions. Anyone? No. Okay. All right. For example, Viramutu adapted the questionnaire from, not actually adapted, this is adopted, not that much of, quite a substantial one, we call it adapt. So Viramutu, he did this research in Malaysia by using UTAP model. So can you see what kind of amendments have been made? So Venkatesh, the context is mobile internet technology, because back in 2012, not many of us are doing internet banking. There are not so many government apps, but right now, everything, you check with your app, right? From your saman, right? From your status, your registration status with certain government departments. So back then, it is quite new, right? It is quite new. So, for example, Venkatesh mentioned the use of mobile internet has become habit for me. But for Viramutu, okay, the use of e-filing, we use e-filing, right? When we wanted to file tax with LHDN, has become automatic to me. It carries the same meaning, but then, the wordings are different. I am addicted to use mobile internet. I am accustomed to use e-filing. Can you see that? Yeah, the meaning remains the same, but the choice of words are different. Okay, this is the same. HT3 is exactly the same except for mobile internet, e-filing, okay? Using mobile internet has become natural to me. Okay, Venkatesh might drop this because of certain loading, cross-loading, low-loading issue, statistical issue when testing it using statistical software. But somehow it's okay. It's okay for you to adopt these items because Venkatesh declared this in the article. So in this case, using e-filing has become a necessity. So these are an example of adapted instrument. So I hope you can understand this. You cannot you cannot develop your own sentences that has different meaning. For example, I like I like to use e-filing. Does this has anything related to do with these statements? No, right? I am happy. I feel like I want to use it again. That is more towards intention. I like to use is much more towards attitude. Kan? Masuk dan lari ya. So be careful. Be careful. Extremely careful. So that's why it's safe for you to look at what you call that? At valid sources. Because this Viramutu was published by, can you see this? Elsevier. When an article is published by an Elsevier title, kecuali Procedia, okay, I mentioned here, kecuali Procedia. Okay, Procedia is from Elsevier, but they are not journals. They are a collection of proceeding papers. And many of them, not to say not quality, shouldn't be referred to when you wanted to adopt your instrument. Don't refer to Procedia, Procedia Transport, Procedia of Social Behavioral Sciences, Procedia Finance, Procedia Computer Science. If the title carries the word Procedia that comes from Elsevier, just ignore it, okay? If you wanted to adapt from instrument, kalau you nak refer for your LR, okay. But for your instruments, avoid at all costs. Other than Procedia, if it is a journal, rest assured, in Elsevier, most of the journals are Q1, Q2 top-notch journals. We talk about Elsevier. I sent papers there. I am a reviewer, but then my paper were rejected many times. Although I am also a reviewer for Elsevier, Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services, Q1. I always review papers. The editor always requests me, but when I send paper, it keeps on being rejected because the standard quality is very, very high. So if you go to Science Direct, that is a great source for you to find your measurement. Okay, to find the measurement that is right for you. That is just my tips. Okay. All right. Can we have a break? Because I need to get some refreshment for a while. Let's take a 7 minutes break here. Okay. I'm gonna see you afterwards. All right. And inshallah, I'm going to start again. I hope all of you have already get your necessary refreshment. Get something to drink, coffee, tea, soft drinks. Let's make this not that formal. Let's make this interactive. I'm not going to give a lecture for a long time because I'm sure you have a lot of questions to ask. So I hope I can finish by 12. Okay, so that by 1, we can go for a specific Q&A to help you, to address certain of your concerns, certain problem, any hiccups. Maybe I can give you some tips how you wanted to accommodate to your supervisor. Can if you are academicians, if you are lecturers, maybe I can give you some tips on how to do, on how to improve your research skills. Because I want to let you know something. Yeah, my background was not actually marketing because I did finance for my MBA. And when I finished my MBA, I straight go to the industry working in a bank. Frankly, for my master's back then in 2004 or 2005, masa tu tengah tsunami dekat Aceh kan, if you can remember that. Yeah, I didn't complete any thesis. The requirement was for me not to do thesis, not to do research. My FYP for masters, they call it as ABP, Applied Business Project. So I have to make a case study of a real company and offer solutions to the problems faced by the company. So that was my thesis back then. I have nearly no knowledge of statistics, all these latent variables, survey questionnaire, no. Okay, even for my degree, it was simple. It was just descriptive statistics for my degree. And I came from industry, and the research in academia is different from research from industry. As a banker, the research notes is different. When talk about research in banks, we are looking at financial indicators, market returns. We are looking at the what you call that, the market and industry sentiment. Can we are looking at the risk profile of certain industry. So it's totally different when I went into the academic line. So I learned from scratch. What does it mean by variables? I also read the same textbook that you learn for your research method. Salkin, the book from Umar Sekaran, Introduction to Research Method. I learned SPSS, Julie Palan book. And yeah, when I did my PhD, that's the time when I learned a lot on how to do research. So don't worry. I started from scratch. Perhaps I was much worse than all of you. But don't worry. This is a good stepping stone. You need to have independent learning because I learned not so much from my supervisor. Of course, he taught me, he guided me. As a student, you cannot expect your supervisor to become your teacher. You need to independently learn by yourself from books, from your exercise, from when you have your undergrad student. You can try to give simple project to your student that involves data collection. Okay, as long as it fit the course requirement, with the course objective, it's okay. As long as you have some data to play around, to explore, to learn. All right. Okay, so that's just a preamble. I'm gonna share my screen. All right. Okay. So now let's look into the validation and pretest of questionnaire. Okay, so when you have a framework, okay, sometimes students are reckless. They think that the questionnaire is suitable, but suddenly, when they go for Viva, they just realize, oh, my items do not fit with the definition of the variable. You understand me? It means that the items are not contextualized with the research setting that you're using. For example, this framework is actually deals with CRM. Okay, so it means that the respondents are companies, meaning that one respondent equal to managers or IT manager or IT director from a company. Okay, so it is organizational. It carries an organizational unit of analysis in which, okay, there are 5 variables involved. For example, perceived information quality. So there needs to be a definition that fits with your, what you call that, fits with the context of the research. If you are studying CRM, you please do not find any variables or items that are actually created for libraries or for education or for consumer. Maybe the item, okay, maybe the measurement is about information quality, but then the context is different. For example, the researcher the paper is talking about how do consumers, they read the label from a product and then they feel whether the information is quality or not. Or perhaps another paper talking about consumers. They tested people who purchase products from Shopee e-commerce, and what are their perception about the information available in Shopee website. Can those items be incorporated in this research? I ask you. Cannot, right? So therefore, the items must be relevant with the context that you are doing. So in this case, talking about CRM at the organization level. So the definition must be streamlined and synchronized with your context. For example, cognitive beliefs about the favorable or unfavorable characteristic of the currency, accuracy, completeness, reliability. If you learn CRM, you already know quality information requires current, complete, correct, unique, the element for the exchange of customer information through the use of a CRM database. So the item must fit with the conceptualization. rather than the items that are being asked to respondents who shop using Shopee. That is totally irrelevant. Okay, and then let's look at the mediator. The mediator is customer knowledge processing. So in this case, you need to explain the the first order and the dimensions of that particular construct. So you mentioned as a whole, CKP or customer knowledge processing, we are talking about intra-organizational process through which firms acquire, disseminate, and utilize knowledge about and from their specific strategically important customers. After that, you need to explain what each of these dimension really means. What are the operational definition for each of the dimensions? Followed by marketing performance. Okay, marketing performance, you cannot create your items on your own. You cannot say that the word I. Why? Because the unit of analysis is organization. So instead of I, the questionnaire should read something like my company. For example, my organization, my company. So that will reflect well with the context of your research. So it means that improvement in market share of products, sale of products, and return of marketing investment. And you really need to look at the source. Okay, really examiners will look at the source and they look at the journal. Does this journal come from appropriate journal? Can. For example, if it comes from knowledge management journal, it can be relevant. But suddenly your journal is talking about different aspect. Yeah. Journal of Wildlife Conservation. Of course, that is not relevant. Okay, now let's look at the next slide. So I hope you understand, yeah? I have to tell this many times to students because definitions, there are a lot of definitions out there. You need to make sure the definitions are compatible with the instrument that you will be using in your questionnaire. And the sources has to be relevant as well. Relevant and recent. Not so problem if it's 2006 or 2010. I think not so problem, but it's best if you can get more than 2010 and above. Can try to avoid instruments from 1980, 1992, okay? Then the examiner will ask you, are you sure that there are no further improvement to this questionnaire? Perhaps some people have already revised, adapted, or reword the instruments. So in this case, you need to do some clever backward referencing. Okay, so let's look at this questionnaire wording. I'm going to go this very fast because these are quite straightforward. It makes common sense. Okay, so in your sentences wordings, it needs to be short, simple, straight to the point. Okay, avoid slang, avoid jargons, abbreviations that people are not familiar with. Right. For example, if you wanted to ask LHDN, you type that PCB. Not many people can remember PCB to potongan cukai berjadual, for example. So you need to clarify using the full wordings, okay? And avoid double barrel questions. Double barrel means it carries two meanings, tasty and refreshing. Okay, Coca-Cola is tasty, right? But then Coca-Cola cannot be refreshing as a coffee, because coffee keeps you afresh, rather than if you drink, I don't know, Coke can make you refresh or not. But this carry two different meanings, can? If the respondent says that, oh, Coke is tasty but not refreshing, then how to answer, right? So that can affect the reliability of your result. Okay, and like mentioned earlier, clear also and ambiguous. For example, frequency. We often ask this question: how often do you shop? How often do you purchase? For example, when you say occasional, how many times is occasional? Some people say 5 times occasional, kan? Ataupun is it 1 or 2 times? What does it mean by sometimes? 2 or 3 times? What does it mean by often? 10 times? 100 times? So try to make sure that it is objectified, meaning that 1 or 2 times, 3 or 4 times, more than 4 times. This is much more clearer for people to relate. Okay? Clear instruction. What brand of computer do you own? Okay. So what happened is that, okay, what happened if, that person has many computers? So which one to select? Are you going to give multiple options that can be answered? Okay. And then avoid double negatives. This can cause respondents to feel quite difficult to answer. Kan? Soalan dia negatif. I do not feel tired and bored at the workplace. I do not feel threatened by the employment process. That's why, like Prof. Ramaya he told me earlier, avoid negatively worded questions. So if you have a negatively worded questions, try to revert back to the positive one. Because for Malaysia, it doesn't work that way. Yeah? I'm not sure about other country. If you're from Middle East, for example, you can try that. But in Malaysia, if you put negative worded questions, sometimes Malaysian respondents, they are like Rambo. You know Rambo? Shooting everywhere, when they keep answering, sometimes, they just tick, 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 tick. What happened is that your item is not reliable. You have to remove the item. So that is such a waste lah for you to have an item removed because of negatively worded item. Avoid biased questions. So, for example, these are often related with racial sensitive. For example, immigrant workers from country X should be monitored since many of them were involved in criminal activities. But this can be biased, can be sometimes viewed as racist. So try to avoid this because you are making a pre-assumption. You are saying that this group of people are like this. Okay, these are what we call as prejudice, element of prejudice. Try to avoid that. Same also like this. Patriotic Malaysians should buy imported cars, although that would put local labor out of work. This is your assumption. Doesn't mean that this is true. This is a matter of debate, right? So why not just ask, Malaysians should buy imported cars? Just simple as that, okay? Because the longer your item questionnaire sounds, the more complicated it becomes, the more difficult the respondents are going to ask. So what happened is that you are going to suffer a reliability problem when you wanted to analyze the data. So try to make your items, the wordings, as simple as possible. All right, this is exactly for open-ended. I don't think this type of issue is particularly relevant to many of us, but just for example, which brand of shampoo can be changed to, try to offer some probability. If one more of the brand is used, please tick all the brands that apply. Okay, I don't think many of us are going to have all this who, what, when, and or where, because this is much more open-ended. For the next one is for you to avoid complex sentences. The distribution of the product is adequate, which sounds quite ordinary. Why not the products are readily available when I wanted to buy them, for example? Okay, avoid overlapping missing categorical items. This often happen in demographics, in demographic section. For example, you mentioned, okay, SPM, undergrad, postgrad, master, PhD. Why not you combine, for example, postgrad, masters, and PhD? Postgrad also means master, right? So this is duplication. And then you say single married, but you forget that they are also widowed, for example. And then there are some questions that are very difficult. For example, if you are doing a marketing survey, how many gallons of soft drink? Wow, gallons ni American, right? They like to use the word gallons, right? But if you use British standard, it's liters, right? How many gallons of soft drinks did you consume? So why not make it objectified, like I mentioned earlier, 1, 2, 3, 4 to 6, 7 or more times. This one is like an open-ended. Try to make it close-ended. Okay, for example, what is the annual per capita expenditure on groceries in your household? Okay, this can be something that is difficult to estimate. Why not? What is the monthly expenditure? Okay, rather than annual, because monthly you can easily remember. All right. Okay, avoid implicit alternative, right? I like to fly when traveling short distances. But then, okay, is there any certain comparison? Why not you compare rather than driving? Okay. And then this is an implicit assumption, should not be worded so that the answer is dependent on implicit assumption. Okay, this is also carries some form of prejudice, right? Okay, so You say that, okay, I am in favor of a balanced budget if it would result in a decrease of in the personal income tax. Oh, but what if the respondent does not agree with this? He or she may be confused how to answer. So just straightforward, I am in favor of a balanced budget. All right, once you get all your instruments ready, you need to conduct a special, you need to have another process in what we call as phase validity. So what does it mean by phase validity? It means that you need to refer to academic experts. Okay, most likely these academic experts need to be PhD qualified. Okay, some says it's okay to approach people without full professorship, but it's also okay to approach lecturers who do not have the title professor, as long as that person has a lot of experience in research. Okay, you look for Google Scholar, for example, ataupun you look for Scopus. Remember, you can use Scopus not only to search articles, but to search for experts. Okay. You type the name of expert in Scopus database, look at the H index, look at the citations, publications, all right? So only then you can understand, oh, this professor, this academician is an expert in what kind of field. Okay, so with this kind of experience, that can help you to refine or to make sure that you are actually positioning the right instrument for your questionnaire. And remember, you don't give your questionnaire to your validators. You need to prepare a specific document called questionnaire validation form with a cover letter. This is not the questionnaire that you are going to give to your respondents. This is the questionnaire that is specifically tailored for you to give to the validators, the expert validators. So what do you need to provide in the validation form? You need to provide the framework, source of instruments, the operational definition, so that this expert will understand what are you studying actually. So this is an example of a validation form. This is a real example actually, that I actually gave to Prof. Ramaya during my PhD. She's very kind actually to, to answer it through physical, through a physical copy. Okay, so what table did I provide? Okay, you need to provide the construct, the dimension, the sources to which you adopt or adapt your questionnaire, the skills that you used. Okay, what are the definition of that construct? Okay, need to be straightforward. This definition comes from the thoughts of the original author who developed the instruments. Okay, you need to mention how are these items modified. You need to mention, is it modified or there are no modification at all? You need to mention. Okay, the original items, you need to mention, the original items can be referred in the appendix. All the items that exist here have been modified with the input of your supervisors. So what happened is you insert all your items in these rows, okay, and you put this comment section so that the validators or the expert can provide the comments. For example, uh, the expert asked me, what does it mean by MD, market development? So perhaps I need to clarify in my in my questionnaire, or perhaps I need to reword or rechange the term, because when people don't understand the terminology that I'm using, they might not able to answer my questions reliably. That will affect my reliability later on. So perfect match here, you offer some what we call that feedback, so that the expert can just tick and tick. Either it's a perfect, maintain the item. Moderate means modify, fine-tuning. Poor match means the item should be removed. So based on this feedback, you need to compile from at least, I think, 2 or 3 experts. You discuss with your supervisor, and you will decide later on which item that needs to be maintained, needs to be edited or revised, or perhaps need to be removed. No problem if you remove. You need to mention in your thesis. Okay, why were these items removed? Because justified, because based on the feedback from the expert panels during the phase validity process. Don't worry if the items need to be removed. All right. So after you get all these items validated and you refine your items, you discuss with your supervisor. So what happened is you come up with a final questionnaire booklet. Okay, now what's next? Do you straight to go for pilot? All right, my suggestion is for you to go before pilot, you go for pre-testing. The pre-testing, how is it different from pilot test? Pre-testing means you wanted to have some people to read, people who you would like to target as your respondents later on. You wanted them to read your questionnaire and you see their responses. Are they facing difficulty? Or when they answering the questionnaire, you can see that they are scratching their heads, okay? They feel very stressful. These are the things that you need to see, okay? This is just something like experimenting, whether your questionnaire, is it comfortable for your respondents to answer? How long does it take for the respondents to answer? And then perhaps you need to have some form of a short interview, short feedback session with the pre-test respondents. You ask them, what are the terminology used? Is it difficult for you to understand? Is there any words that needs to be simplified? Is there any terminology or is there any content that they find it difficult to answer? So why? Because, if sentences are difficult, then you can hurt your response rate and data quality. Okay, remember, if your respondents answer item number 1, 5, item number 2, 1, item number 3, 3, item number 4, 5, all these should suppose belong to variable 1. So what happened? If all of the respondents answer like this can be a reliability issue. The items needs to be removed. Ataupun when you run your validity analysis, you are going to suffer from cross-loading problems. The reason is simple. It's because respondents, they find it difficult to answer your questions, maybe because of many issues. For example, like I mentioned earlier, unclear statements, conflicting or biased statements. This can actually adversely affect the outcome of your statistical test. And then you assess the response latency. Like I mentioned earlier, you need to record or estimate using a timer. How long does it take for that person to complete reading from the cover letter until the end of the questionnaire? Okay, and then what does it mean by pilot test? Pilot test, it means that when you had your items finalized, you wanted to conduct a small scale study because you wanted to test the reliability of the indicators. Okay, some people say that, oh, you need to do pilot test because you need to run EFA. Not necessarily. Unless if you are adopting an item with so many changes in the instrument, yes, they might need an EFA or exploratory factor analysis. But if you are using an established instrument with little changes, maybe 50 is enough. For example, you don't need 100, 200 just because you wanted to do EFA, later on you want to do CFA. It depends. It depends on the measurement or the instruments that you are using. Is there many changes? Has it been used before in Malaysia? Has it been localized? So it depends. So in this case, pilot test is just for you to understand, in terms of the reliability, the extent of non-response, the non-response rate. Okay, so what are the major differences? You can look at, if we put an analogy, it's like you're attending a theater. Okay, a pre-test means you are fitting on the dress costume, meaning that you call the actors, you try to do some fitting, whether the clothes, the attire, the costumes, can it fit or not? If it fits, it's okay. But does it mean that it is a rehearsal? No, it's not a rehearsal. A pilot is something like a rehearsal. It means that the costume can fit the actors, and it's time for them to do rehearsal, to do all their acting. So that is pilot. Usually pilot has around 30 to 100, while pre-test 12 to 50. So around that range. Okay, now let's look at organizing the questionnaire. Okay, so When you have a questionnaire, you need to have a proper cover title. So a cover letter can make a huge difference in terms of whether the respondents will be willing or not to involve. So you need to mention in layman term. So when you go to REC, I'm sure all of you know this, REC means Research Ethics Committee. So there is a participant information sheet. So in this case, you need to provide in layman term. Do not put all the scientific jargons there, meaning that the respondents who are not from academic background, who are not familiar with the theory, they can understand what you are doing, okay? Why you are doing. You don't put your RO here. Do not put moderator, mediator, regression, no. Just keep it simple. Why is it being conducted? You introduce yourself. Okay, for PhD candidate, why not you mention yourself as researcher rather than as a student? Barulah nampak professional kan? PhD candidate, PhD researcher, right? Okay, why is it important to respond? You need to mention what does your research will contribute to the country, to the issue, for example. How long will it take to complete? You need to assure respondents it is expected that 10 to 15 minutes of your time will be required. Okay, you give your contact details, and most importantly, to avoid bias, you need to provide an assurance of anonymity, confidentiality, no right or wrong answers, and you give them the freedom to voluntarily withdraw from answering or completing the study. Itu kena ada dalam ethics punya statement, meaning that the respondents can voluntarily always withdraw from, from the study whenever they feel that they are not convenient, because you don't want to have that sense of coercion. Coercion terpaksa. You don't coerce your respondents to answer. Okay, provide motivation for the respondents to fill in. It depends. You wanted to give vouchers, you can buy Shopee vouchers, KFC vouchers, kan? From Lazada, Shopee, there are a lot of vouchers out there, okay? Or maybe a reload top up, that can also be used, okay? And don't forget to thank the respondent. All right, so provide simple instruction, How are they going to circle to check? Can. So for each new section, provide the Likert scale indicators and instruction, even though they are the same as previous section. You need to mention what does it mean by 7, what does it mean by 1, strongly disagree, 2, strongly agree. You always need to repeat because respondents are not familiar like us, what those Likert scale means. And you need to put the most information questions up front. Okay, sometimes this can be conflicting. Some say that demographic needs to put in front, some says at the back. If you have a very long questions that the respondents can get easily fatigued, fatigue means tired, penat. So it's better to put the demographic behind. Okay? So perhaps the most intriguing questions can be answered earlier rather than later on. Okay? But as a rule of thumb, please avoid 50 items This is too much I think people can get very, very tiring. If you have like 50, 60 items, I think just keep it below 40 Actually, the magic number is something like that around 40 questions. All right, organize questions in a funnel approach. I think this one is like for open-ended, open-ended. So I'm not going to touch this so much. Also similar like this, group similar questions. Okay. Minimize open-ended questions. I'm sure not many of us are going to do open-ended. Okay, because we're not going to use the qualitative data anyway. Unless if you have, specific thing that you wanted to ask. I think like 2 to 3, 1 to 3 is okay, but not so much. Okay. I think I'm going to take 5 minutes. Another 5 minutes before we take a short break. Okay, and then we look at professionalism. Remember, you are representing UiTM. Image, you're carrying the image of UiTM. So you need to affiliate yourself with UiTM. So you refer to your DPPS office on what should constitute the format of your cover letter. There must be a logo of UiTM. Try to use a booklet format. Make sure everything is follow the UiTM corporate identity. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, instead of PhD master student, why not PhD or MSc candidate or researcher? If you are hired as a GRA, okay, research grant, under research grant, you call yourself graduate research assistant. Kan? Barulah dapat gas sikit kan? Alright. And then the formatting, make sure not too small, not too big. Okay, like when you wrote your assignment or TC, it has to be Arial 11 or Times New Roman 12. Avoid fancy fonts. You don't use bold all the time. That might sound very rude. No capital letters. Only use italic for translations. Okay, the layout too not too cramped. Okay, don't be stingy. Now, photostat pun stingy. Make sure it is well spaced. Okay, so that it is very neat. Number all item and pages. Do provide numbering. Okay, and as always, thank the respondents before and after in the cover letter at the front and also at the end of the questionnaire. Let's say if you do qualitative, if you do longitudinal study, let's say if you follow up, why not give them reward? For example, paling senang online, vouchers, top up reward vouchers, and so forth. What happened when the questionnaire is not completed on the spot? This happens when you have a very long questionnaire, or perhaps the respondents are very busy. So why not try to propose a reasonable deadline that is convenient for the respondents, preferably 2 weeks. Okay, I mean, with courtesy, you request the phone number so that you can WhatsApp, you can remind the respondent. If it is not written on the spot, you just ask them where and how to send a completed survey. Okay, so if mail, you enclose stamp and pre-address written envelope. Let's say if, of course, the respondent insists, dia memang nak, that person wanted to answer using hard copy. So enclose, provide with a stamp envelope that can make it easy for the respondent to send it back to you. So remember always to use courtesy. And don't worry, there are many times whereby you cannot get your questionnaire written. That's why if you are doing face-to-face or mailing, the response rate can be low. Okay, next slide is for you to track. Next slide is for you to track your response bias. Have you heard of this, everyone? Wait, I'm going to write something. Late response bias. You can Google this by Armstrong and Overton. I can't remember, 1970 something, 1970 something. Armstrong and Everton. Okay, in certain cases, let's say you are giving your respondents or enumerators questionnaires, and you would like your respondent to return to you later after 2 weeks, because you know that the respondents are busy, right? So what happened is that there are chances that they might be biased between respondents who reply early or responded early, or those respondents who responded late. So you need to know, that early response and late response. So you need to provide your own log, whether using your notebook or using Excel. This one is using Excel, meaning that every respondent you record in your Excel. For example, if you are doing strategic marketing, you are investigating companies, you are investing factories, you are investing SMEs. So, for example, you highlight what kind of industry, is it F&B services, which location does it come from, the person in charge, the contact number, so that you can follow up, the email if necessary, the date distributed, date collected. Okay, early response means you get back the response below 30 days. Late response meaning 1 to 3 months, something like that. So, what does this late response bias really means? Okay, it means that experts have been arguing that the group of people who submit early and the group of people submit late tend to provide contrasting answers. They give different answers. The early one says X, the late one says Y. So the variables may have different values. Why? Because Armstrong and Overton believes that those people who responded late, they are likely to represent those people who do not respond at all. You understand me? These people represent those people who do not respond at all. So you wanted to test two group of people that it become your sample, and the other one, people who might represent the people who are not covered under your survey, which we call as late respondents, or which we call as another segment of your population. So you wanted to compare these two by using using apa? Using t-test or ANOVA. Tapi since we have two groups, the suitable analysis is t-test. We wanted to see your variables, are they different or not? Let's say you have 3 IV and 1 DV, for example, 1 DV. So you do test ANOVA. You do test ANOVA, not ANOVA, t-test. Is there any significance between those who is categorized as late responders and those who categorize as early respondents? Ada significant tak difference? So, what is the favorable result? You need to have, kalau boleh, you wanted to have the result not significant. You wanted to mention that, the variables, the construct, the value are insignificant when compared between early and late respondents, because you don't want the late respond bias. Kalau significant means there can be an issue, because those late respondents, they have a different perception. It means that the rest of the population that is not covered under your study might have different form of opinions. But don't worry so much. In most likely cases, the result should be non-significant if you are targeting the right respondents. I hope you can follow me. All right. Can we take a break before we have our last, what we call as, where I can cover the rest of the slides before we go Q&A? Because I feel that my throat is a little bit dry. Okay, I'm gonna see you in 5 minutes later. Okay. Right. See you, ladies and gentlemen. So let's continue again before we move on to Q&A session. Okay, I am sharing my slide. Okay, previously I talked about your cover letter, right? In the cover letter, what you should do. Okay, so in the cover letter, let's say if you wanted to give what we call that? Wanted to give a hard copy, a booklet, physical form of a questionnaire. So when you wanted to format your questionnaire, the front is a cover letter. Okay, so there must be a header. The header must display the UiTM corporate logo information, and on top of your booklet, on top of the cover page, which is also your front page, you need to do something like this. You need to do something like something like boxes like this, tables with several columns. Why? Because you wanted to jot down. So you want to receive back your questionnaire, you wanted to jot down the number, the ID. For example, the first one is 001. Okay, and for example, if you already reached your 400 respondent, for example, if you use 400, for example. So this ID you will input in your SPSS, right? This is the ID that you are going to input in your SPSS. Many students forget to create a variable ID in their SPSS sheet. This can make it difficult if, let's say, you have some issues with your data, right? The data is not right, incorrect data, redundant. Somehow you have to refer back to your physical booklet. So how can you refer? You need to write down the ID. The ID means the subsequent number that is assigned to the respondent should be similar with the ID that you key into your SPSS. It means that if you have error, a data entry error, of course, you can always refer back to the questionnaire, because as a human being, when we input data in using your computer, there will always be error when you try to code in SPSS. So don't forget to do that. So in the questionnaire, there must be a unique identifier. Okay, don't worry about this C and T. This one is for experimental. C is control group. T is for treatment group. Unless if you do experimental, you don't have to worry about this. Okay, so let's say if, yeah, you are giving your questionnaire for the respondents to answer for 2 weeks, you need to provide some information, the date delivered and date returned for late and non-response bias analysis. By using this data, only then you can fill up here, nampak tak? Ni ID, this is the ID, this is the date, right? The date distributed, date collected. Okay, I did my own Excel sheet when I collected my data as well. So by having this, you know your data are organized. When you feel that, oh, this questionnaire is not fully completed, for example, so it has so lot of missing values, and this might affect my result. So you can always look at the PIC, right, the person in charge, and maybe with courtesy, you can request that person to fill up the missing data, to update the answers. All right. So what happens if you do longitudinal? Longitudinal means you are going to give to again dealing with the same respondents. You need to make sure that their identity are anonymous, but then somehow you save their phone numbers to follow up. All right. This might involve some not to say invasion of privacy, but somehow you know their identity and their phone numbers. But this should not be reported. This data should not be included in your final data, in the data that you input for your statistical analysis. All right, right now we have REC here, Research Ethical Committee, that you need to follow. So you need to submit using the rate system. I'm sure you can refer to DPPS office. You need to make sure that all the forms are in order. You don't expect your supervisor to do this for you. You need to fill up all the form by yourself. Your supervisor will check and provide some recommendations and sign the document. Okay. So remember that as a human being, they need to be respected as well. And the decision to take part in survey, the option to withdraw from the study. So that's why you need to mention in the cover letter, you can voluntarily withdraw from or retract from participating in the study. Of course, cannot be coerced, can. And assurance of anonymity, meaning that although they are sharing their phone number and names, you need to make sure that these identifiers, these data, are not being processed, are not being reported. Okay. So, okay, these are some important issues that some of them I have mentioned earlier. When you do your research, avoid negatively worded questions, because, yeah, it worked in the West, but it's not always workable in the Malaysian context. They will affect your reliability indicators. Okay, and now we turn into common method variance. This is what we call as how you wanted to handle bias in data. Remember, in most studies related to business, marketing, social sciences, when questionnaires are being used, when the questionnaire are self-administered, that means that the data is self-reported. Faham tak? Self-reported means I'm the one who answering. So I can say whatever I want about the data. You understand me? If the question asks me if I perform well or not, and let's say I'm not that performer, I like to waste my time, playing games at work. Example je, not that it reflect myself. Okay, so I may have that kind of bias. I may want to inflate my marks. Betul tak? I takkan ada cakap, I give my rating 102, right? So those are self-reported. So this can inflict bias. So that's why in HR research, when you wanted to measure job performance, some supervisors or experts, they require you to ask the question not to the worker itself, but you give the questions to the supervisor of the worker to rate the performance of the employees. That can be troublesome, but you can always justify why your IV and DV should come from the same source, which is self-reported by the employee. There's no problem of doing that. It's just that you need to read. You need to do a more reading. What does it mean by self-reported measure, self-reported questionnaire, self-reported measure? Why does this bring bias, and how you wanted to control the bias? So you need to read this in depth and understand the term common method bias. So this is where some procedural and statistical approach were being proposed. I wanted you to read something from Potsakov, simple je. You Google saja, Potsakov, McKinsey or McKinsey, I forgot. Ada perkataan Mac or not. McKinsey and Potsakov, I think around 2002. And then you just type a CMV or CMBA, common method bias ataupun variance. You will always find the result. You always find the result using Google. So there are procedural and statistical approaches. Procedural means doesn't involve you amending the data. It means that you have, you have implemented certain procedure when you wanted to distribute your questionnaire. So in this case, we also name it as ex ante approach, where you use a procedural remedies. There are so many things, right? We do some sort of physical separation. Okay, this can be tough because you collect your data from the employee to answer the IV, and then for job performance, you collect the data from the boss, right? In order to evaluate the employee performance. Okay, this is physical separation. Okay, psychological separation, maybe you do different timing. This is what we call as longitudinal, meaning that you approach the same respondent many times. Okay, this can be very tiresome, can be very challenging to run, although in Europe, in developed countries, it's normal for PhD candidate to run a longitudinal type of research design. All right. Okay. And you can also adopt varying skills. So this is especially true when you wanted to use SEM. If you wanted to use what you call that, if you wanted to establish the statistical equation, can for example, or what are the for example, you wanted to have specific estimation, linear estimation, this is not suitable. But if you use estimation, but if you use SEM, then this is okay, because specifically in Smart PLS or in AMOS, you can have a standardized, what we call as, you can have a standardized equation. Standardized means how much the data is far from the mean values. It means that your IV can have 5-point scale, your DV is 7-point scale. All right. So when you run SPSS, you can see that in regression, there are two, right? Unstandardized and standardized. So if you wanted to use different scales for your question item, you cannot use unstandardized when you report. You have to use the standardized coefficient, right? Standardized coefficient. Okay, atau beta values, Pernah dengar kan beta values? These are what we call as coefficient, atau path coefficient. It has to be standardized. All right, and then the other way around is counterbalance the order of questions. It means that you jumble up. You jumble up the questions so that the respondent doesn't know. This item falls under this construct. They have no idea. Okay, and the most important in the cover letter, you wanted to comfort the respondents. They feel that their identities are anonymous, and whatever the answers are confidential, only for the purpose of the research. Please tell them there is no particular right or wrong. It's just an honest appraisal. That will be enough. And provide clear instruction for completing the measure. Like, for example, I mentioned to you the Likert scale needs to be reiterated at every section. And then, like I mentioned earlier, operational definition. Kan? For example, you wanted to ask on brand evangelism. Cik, nama. Kan? Nama brand evangelism. Contoh lah ya. Brand evangelism. Kan? We always think that evangelism is something related to Christianity, to religiosity, but actually this is another term for loyalty, right? Equity, loyalty. So you need to provide some disclaimer lah under the title. You need to explain to the respondent, maybe in a simple sentence, what does it mean by brand evangelism? That's why operational definition is very, very important. Right? And you need to put into layman terms. Layman means not too technical, no specific jargons that are very difficult to be understood by non-academicians, so that when they are answering, they faham, they understand what are the items all about. Okay, and then you need to know that some respondents, can find it difficult to answer. When they find it very difficult, that can affect their ability to answer accurately. That's another thing. This can cause some difficulty in terms of you getting a consistent results. Okay, but then if it is easy, then you have the motivation. They are able to answer, but do they want or do they not want? Kan? For example, suddenly you are giving this questionnaire to someone who has been to someone who had just a fight with his wife or her husband, for example. So what happened is that she's a very bad mood. So she has very little motivation, and what happened? The answer can be haywire. So actually, it depends also on luck. Yeah. So whatever it is, we are always hoping that our respondents are capable, are able, are in good mood to answer, so that will help them, willing to answer accurately. Sometimes this is beyond our control, but then this is within our control. We wanted to make sure that our questionnaires are comfortable, convenient, easy for the respondents to answer. Okay, let's go back to CMV. You need to read. I like to reiterate, you need to read a lot in order to understand CMV. Okay, you need to read from different methods such as correlation method by Lindell and Whitney. For correlation method, they are using a thing called marker variable, right, which I'll show you later. A CFA marker by Richardson. This one is quite complex and mostly in IT-based studies. And full collinearity test by Cobb and Lin, or Net and Cobb. Well, this one, I think this was a solution that was offered to me by Prof. Ramaya, just in case if you don't have any marker variable. So what is a marker variable? Marker variable was promoted by Lindell and Whitney. It says that theoretically unrelated variables should have no relationship with your outcome. Okay, I repeat again, theoretically unrelated. Theoretically unrelated. So what are those theoretically unrelated variables? For example, preference for the color blue. What does it mean? I like blue color. I like blue clothes. I like to use blue handphone. So, do you think that your preference for color blue has any effect on job performance? Of course, no, right? It doesn't make sense, okay? And in other studies, they use employee benefit administration, propensity to use the web for searching information, success with traditional advertising, work flexibility, technological turbulence. These are some of the marker variables. All right. So when you do marker variables, you can see that these are the main variables in your research. Let's say abuse communication leads to impact. So you wanted to make sure that the correlation of this marker variable among the construct of interest are low. Low means below 0.3 or 0.4 or lower than this correlation values. Nampak tak? It's much lower. These values are much lower than this one. So it tells you that this marker variable has little association with the major variables that are of interest within your model. All right, for this marker variable, I believe you need to really study and dig deeper from resource books, from research books, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, now I'm just going to give you a sample of frameworks which which were inspired from several instances of DRP and even Viva. I would like to make a disclaimer that the examples that I show here, they came from previous students' shortcomings of their framework. Their identities are not disclosed because I am not condemning everyone. The reason is not to belittle anyone. I'm not going to humiliate anyone. No, that's not my purpose. The purpose is for me to share so that hopefully the mistakes should not be repeated by all of you. So if you find that one of them is yours, please accept with an open heart and mind. I'm not disclosing any identity. Okay, I'm trying to help. I never condemn anyone's hard work, right? Think positive. Remember, examiners often suggest for improvements rather than searching for faults. That's why when you want to tell your Viva, in most cases, tak kisahlah whether it's UM, UTM, UITM, usually the postgraduate office will ask the supervisor, who does he or she thinks should be appointed as the internal or external. In most cases, for PhD in UITM, we have one external and one internal. Usually for internal, you can use the supervisors, contact, and you can ask the supervisors to find someone within his or her circle of friends or colleagues who are very helpful, constructive, okay? And also for external examiners, usually DPPS are looking for full professors, if not associate professor, okay? And in this case, you need to look at the CV of the examiners, okay? Usually, these examiners, they make their CV available online. No? You look at their profile, how many Viva, Viva presentations, how many of them have major or minor? Okay, so you can know whether these examiners, are they strict or not, okay? Okay, so I'm going to show you are just examples. You don't have to ask me, who's the student? No. Okay, this topic requires some major correction for Viva. The topic of the study is false advertising on consumer online purchase behavior, the mediating effects of word of mouth. So the student used the Mehrabin and Russell SOR. They call it stimulus, organism, response theory. Stimulus means what external environment that stimulate your senses. In this case, this kind of stimulation will affect your affective state of mind, okay, in terms of your cognitive perception. That will in turn lead to behavioral outcomes. So that is the tenet of the SOR theory, okay? So what happened is that the candidate do not have valid adapted or adapted instrument. The student created the variable from scratch without showing the proof of what we call as the items, the present items that represent these variables. Okay, so the student wanted to use SEM, for example. So when we talk about SEM, when you do mediation, you need to have a direction. It means that false advertising will positively or negatively leads to UWOM. You cannot say that, false advertising is associated with WOM. The word associated or related is okay, but it doesn't tell you the direction of the relationship. Okay, between A and B, okay, sorry, how to write again? Between A and B, there needs to be an arrow. It means that A will positively link to B. The increase in A will lead to increase in B. That is a indication of direction. Okay, and then the outcome is behavior. But then in the behavior, the items read like intention. So the examiner will ask, is it behavior or intention? When you talk about behavior, okay, you need to have wordings that reflect the actual behavior of the customers. I have purchased. I have conducted. That is a behavior that has already been conducted. That is not intention, right? Okay, how about the moderating? The moderating is not specific. You need to be specific. It's to what? Are you talking about gender? Are you talking about income? Are you talking about education? Is it nominal? Is it ordinal? Is it interval? You have to remember, if you are using a nominal variable, scale variable as a moderator, then the interpretation can be different from, let's say, if the moderator is a continuous variable. Okay, continuous means using interval scale. Using interval scale, no problem of using a nominal scale moderator, but you need to be specific. It is a nominal variable. So there must be a dummy variable, whether it's 0 or is it 1. If you use a nominal or categorical types of moderators. So you need to study deeper on SPSS so that as nominal, you need to have the dummy variables. If you do ANOVA, if you do differences between different groups of nominal categorical types, then you need to also have dummy variables also. All right. I think this is for masters, right? Not for PhD, because the relationship is simple. Not PhD, master candidate. All right. What it says here is perceived justice. I'm sure some of you know the justice theory, right? We have distributive, procedural, interactional. So the framework says this justice factor leads to switching intention. All right, so the results came out positive for these two, distributive and interactional. So in the discussion, the candidate wrote, the better the customers were treated, the better is the outcome for the telecommunication service provider. Is it true? Is it false? Okay, you need to look at the DV, the phenomena of interest. The problem of your research should focus not on this, but on this. Yes, this can be part of the problem, but the main problem is the dependent variable. Switching intention, is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's actually a bad thing, right? Okay, you expect that the distributive justice should have negative direction with switching intention. The more justice you need to make, the outcome should be what? The outcome should be employment retention, right? Tak? I'm sorry, not employment. Customer loyalty, customer loyalty, for example. So in this case, all the hypotheses actually were not accepted because if you look at the direction, it goes against the stipulated earlier hypothesized direction. It should be negative in the first place. Yeah, because when the customer feel that their actions are treated with equal and justice manner, with a just manner, they are likely to retain, to be loyal, rather than switching to other competitors. So it's just an issue of interpretation and understanding of the direction, and also the operationalization of the construct. This is not well understood. All right. Now we look at the most popular theory. Okay. I hope that not many of you use this theory alone. If you use TPB, you need to integrate with another theory, or else it's like a degree level thesis. So theory of blend behavior is already quite too old, since 1991 by Hudson. So if you wanted to do this, you need some integration with another theory. Okay, so this theory says that intention is being predicted by three elements: attitude of the customer or the person, the norms. Norms means what other people do, we also do. It means that whatever we do must get the approval of our social circles, meaning our social environment approves what we are doing, right? We tend to follow what other people do. And perceived behavioral control relates with our confidence, ability, and resources in order for us to perform that behavior. So all of these three elements contribute to intention, and according to Adzen, attention leads to behavior. But does it make sense for you to obtain all this data within a single time frame? Okay, according to experts, that is questionable because you cannot measure intention and behavior at the same time. Let's say you mention, I intend to purchase the product in the future. Suddenly the behavior, I purchase the product. Macam mana tu? You niat, tapi at the same time you dah buat, kan? So intention measures the tendency to do something. Behavior measures something that is your habit, something that you regularly does. So how can these two variables are being measured at the same time, So that's why there is need to have a two-phase. We call it two-phase data collection. T1 and T2. T1 means the first wave or the first phase of data collection. Let's say you collect your data December 2022. For this one, you need to recall and you need to return or to search or to reconnect with the same respondents in February or in March 2023, for example. Okay, so you get my point. Intention and behavior shouldn't be measured within a single point of questionnaire distribution. It should be conducted across different time frame. So this behavior, that's why there are experts who mention that intention is actually a proxy in measuring behavior. Kenalah cari citation, kan? So that's why you don't really need to measure the actual behavior, kan? So intention does its job well in predicting the actual behavior of the subjects. There are literature that support this kind of statement. Okay. This one comes from Northern University, Utara, Malaysia. I'm not going to name the university. Okay. Mediating the role of gender on the link between brand image and loyalty. Okay, I think you can think common sense. Can gender be changed over time? Cannot, right? It means that if the brand image is good, suddenly you change from male to female. Can. Can. And then if the brand image is low, your gender turns from female to male. And that contributes to loyalty. So this is, this is just common sense, right? Of course, your gender cannot change according to human or image perception. Straightforward, can. All right. So this is a matter of unit of analysis here. Okay. So the IV is emotional intelligence. The moderator is also linked to individual level construct, which is locus of control. But the DV or dependent variable is entrepreneurial success or entrepreneurial orientation. The questions that were measured by this variable sounds like we, our company, blah, 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 blah. These items measure entrepreneurial orientation. Meanwhile, the items that represent emotional intelligence, I feel, for example. So, what kind of concern, what kind of, mismatch that you can find here? This is something that is personal, right? The IV and moderator are something that is personal. How can something that is personal in nature contribute to the whole perception or the whole, what we call as, how can individual perception leads to organizational outcomes. That is not logical. Class, that is not logical. For an organizational level construct, it has to be organizational level as well. For example, what? For example, you may mention about resource availability, kan? You can mention about environment, competition. This is related to organization, right? So you cannot have a mismatch in terms of the level of analysis. If it's the other way around, it's okay. For example, organizational culture, right, leads to job performance. So which one is organizational? Job performance or organizational culture? This one is organizational in nature, right? Organizational unit of analysis. Job performance is individual. Is this okay? Yes, this is okay. But the other way around is not okay. You understand me? Because this one reflects the organizational culture, the climate. This can affect the employee performance. But if you say that the EI of a certain people who answer the questionnaire, dia katakanlah, let's say you are giving this questionnaire to gardenia, for example. I don't know, suddenly I think of gardenia, maybe because I'm hungry. Okay. Remember, gardenia have a lot of top management. That's a top management. And suddenly you give questionnaire to the workers, which represent only 1%, maybe like 1% of the workforce of gardenia. From this perception, how can this 1% information you get from this staff can actually be linked to the performance of the whole people, top management who works in that company? You understand me? So this kind of concept is not right. So that's why when you do your framework, you need to understand your unit of analysis. It can be what? It can be individual. It can be group or team, sales team. It can be in the form of a firm or a department. It can be in the form of a country. Country, if you do econometrics, like economic finance, you are comparing people from different countries, for example. But I don't think a country should be unit of analysis because that's too large, too wide. Usually, whether it's firm or individual. Individual can be what? Can be customers, can be employees. Okay? Firms can be what? NGOs, universities, government organizations, factories, SMEs. So there needs to be a clear concept of unit of analysis. There needs to be no mismatch, something like this. Same also like this. This is also the same issue. How can a personality trait, influences a firm performance, which have so many people who actually run the company? Okay, so this is not right. This is not right because personality trait is an individual trait that actually cannot influence the whole performance of the company unless kalau company itu sole prop. Betul tak kelas? Betul tak kelas pula? Am I right? Ladies and gentlemen, sole prop means this person totally own the company 100%. This is okay. You cannot call that firm performance. You can call them business performance, right? So the context must be sole prop because that is individual in nature. Pelik, kalau sole prop ada HRM. Is it possible for a sole proprietorship to have a HRM department, right? So that can be questionable as well. So you can see that there is a mismatch, conflicting unit of analysis. This can be very troubling. If this framework goes into Viva, trust me, if not major, it will be a total failure. Okay, so that's why DRP is useful in order for you to refine your framework so that when your model goes into your Viva, your model will have no problem. Okay, if a model has a problem, then the most likely result will be major correction with revival. Okay, I repeat, major correction with revival. If you have problems with your construct, because if you have this problem, you need to recollect your data. You need to rerun your data collection, which is very, very, what? Very, very disappointing after all your hard work, right? So you wanted to make sure your model is tip-top. Haha. All right, this is just an imaginary work, okay, not related to anyone. Okay, for example, if you are using second order construct, the most popular second order construct is like entrepreneurial orientation. Okay, no problem, because all of these constructs are organizational level, meaning that every respondents are representing one company, probably the director, the manager, or the CEO will become the person who answer the questionnaire. Correct. So what's the problem now? The problem is that these two are the same thing. This is the what we call as the second order. This is actually the parent. This is actually the children. Okay, the dimensions are entrepreneurial orientation. So you cannot say that this one leads to this one. Okay, so this is actually the antecedent by itself. So when you do SEM or through Smart PLS, the arrow is reflective. This is formative. This is quite advanced. In a reflective research, a reflective SEM, this is the construct, a second order construct. Okay, and then this is the second order. Sorry, this is the first order. This is the second order. This is actually the second order. And the arrow needs to be here actually, rather than here. The arrow needs to be here. This is reflective, reflective. All right. And then let's say creativity is proposed as the moderator. What is the problem here? The problem is that you need to make sure the items that resembles creativity might be the same item that represent innovativeness. Do you know that these two are quite having the same meaning? Creativity and innovativeness, thinking out of the box. Yeah. Those are the hallmark ataupun the values of creativity and innovativeness. They are sharing quite the same meaning. So you have a problem what we call as discriminant validity. Okay, when you learn statistics, you will learn about two things. Okay, you learn about convergent and discriminant. Convergent is when you run EFA, CFA, okay? You run factor analysis. Discriminant, when you run correlation table, right? You do correlation between latent variables. And then for SEM, you have Fornell and Laker and heterotrait monotrait ratio. So what does this mean? Correlation means you wanted to make sure that these constructs are quite resemble one another. Maksudnya, the items that falls under this construct, they are actually like cousins, but not exactly identical, but they belong in one group. That is convergent. Discriminant means you wanted to make sure this person is different from the other one. For example, Malaysian ethnic are different from Caucasians, are different from Africans. For example, in terms of their DNA, for example, I'm not talking about any ethnicity issues here. No, I'm just giving example analogy. So discriminant means you wanted to distinguish, separate one from another. So these two validity process are important when you run your validity tests, whether using SPSS or AMOS or Smart PLS. So therefore, when you create your framework, the construct shouldn't be sound similar to one another, or else you're going to have multi-collinearity, cross-loading problem. You have to drop your hypothesis because, the results are not valid. You have cross-loading, you have problems with your loadings, and especially VIF. VIF is variance inflation factor. All right, now let's look at knowledge innovation among academicians. Okay, so the candidate used the theory of the planned behavior as the underpinning theory. So in TPB, what is required? You require three stuff, right? Three elements. You require attitude, required subjective norm or social influence, and you require perceived behavioral control. Okay, the element of attitude ada tak kat sini? Yes, these are some sort of attitude. How you feel the system is easy or not, that can be attitude. PBC refers to your confidence, your ability, and also your all resources that are available in order for you to perform that behavior. So the database reflect the PBC because it reflect the resources. It reflect the resources that can make that kind of behavior possible. So the issue here is SN is not represented in the model. So when you say that your framework is developed based on the paradigm of TPB, theory of planned behavior, but then you did not put a social norm, social influence, subjective norm, then it is a major flaw because your theory is not fully related with your model. This one is missing. This one is missing. That is questioned in the RPs. And also this one. Is this a proper variable name? This is a noun rather than a certain adjective. It needs to have some form of indication. Is it effectiveness? Good. This just reflects a database. That can be something like a nominal. You wanted to reflect something that is continuous, like its scale in nature, for example. Ataupun the availability, yes or no. So there needs to be a clarification whether is this a continuous variable? What is that actually represent the database? Is it effectiveness or is it just the system? Because the name of the variable itself is not clear. So when you wanted to put something as a variable, the variable must be adapted or adopted from the existing literature, or else you need to do mixed method when you wanted to develop a new variable. All right, I hope you understand that. This is similar to previous slide. Creativity and innovation has some form of similarity. So you can have high potential of discriminant validity issues. All right. And then the moderator is also not well defined. It's not a latent variable. There are no clear sources in which the variables are adapted from which sources. And this concept cannot be turned into variable. These are not instruments. These are just concepts that we can usually find in our textbook, right? But you cannot convert this. You cannot convert this into items of your questionnaire. Whatever things that you find in your textbook that are meant for your teaching learning, okay, that are, that are interesting, in the textbook, they mention this is theory, doesn't mean that, this concept, this framework, this illustration, this matrix can be adopted into items. No, okay, it is just to facilitate the understanding. Okay, in textbook, in case studies, they cannot be used as items in your instrument, in your questionnaire. All right, now let's look at the variable names. Can you create your variable names on your own? Cannot, yeah? You cannot create your variable names on your own. You need to adopt the variable names. Not say adopt, you mean like refer to an existing variable name and you use that in your framework. So all of these, involve the candidate creating the variable name on its own, and that is not right. For example, graduate work readiness toward Industrial Revolution 4.0 work environment. Just work readiness is just enough to represent a variable. You don't have to put all your topic, the details of your topic in the variable. That is not right. Okay, we have reached 12:30, although I promised to finish my presentation at 1. So I'm going to stop sharing and yeah. We now open the Q&A session. So are all of you clear? Do you find my presentation useful for you? I hope that this information, something that you can refer to, when you wanted to go for the RP or Viva. Okay, before that, I wanted to share my website that I built using UITM Google site. Okay, to enter this site, because this is hosted under UITM, to download the resources, you need to make sure that you are logged in using your Google Gmail, not your personal Gmail. So you go to accounts.google.com and make sure your UITM, make sure your UITM Gmail is being configured as your main login account, rather than your personal. This is my personal email. This is my UITM account email. So when you log in to your Google account, then you can download my resources, which I share here. Okay, so I'm sharing my notes here. You can download from here. And also my SPSS tutorials in PDF are also here. And you can also see my videos, how to run SPSS from data entry, factor analysis, until reliability and regression analysis. All right, so everything is here. Later on, I will include process. So in the future, if you are reluctant to use AMOS or PLS-SEM, we have what we call as process macro by Professor Andrew Hiss. Professor Andrew Hiss. Okay, and perhaps in the future, I may also include what we call as smart PLS. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to share in your chat box. So you just go to that website. Everything is there, inshallah.
Doctor.
So a journey for doing PhD and MSc by research, can be very dreadful. But yeah, you need to do some self-learning to be very resourceful. And my concern is only one thing, is that when they are many people who cannot finish their PhD, they focus too much on reading rather than writing. Okay, so that's why you need to set your milestone. Setting your milestone means that you get yourself a post-me notes or something that you can write in your Google Keep, in your Evernote, in your OneNote software, for example. You jot down your electronic notes. How many words do you expect every month or every week? Because in order for you to submit your thesis, the requirement is how many words? 60,000 words. Okay, excluding appendix. So logically, if let's say you take about half or 40% from that amount, that should be around 25K to 30K for your DRP proposal. So you need to keep on writing. The problem is that when you read, you become very confused. Tak faham. You keep on reading like you tak faham. So you waste your time. So you get yourself a smartwatch or create a timer in your smartphone. If you read for 10-15 minutes without understanding anything, just move on, okay? Move on. And then you try to record using your timer how much hour or how many minutes you allocate for your writing as compared to your reading. Okay, so you can estimate how many words you can write. It's not just a matter of the content that you write. I'm talking about quantity here, but also the quality of your writing. What's the point if you write a lot, but then your supervisor say all of them are rubbish, right? Okay, answering the question from Harina, of course, you can have more than one theory. So that's why, like, if you use TPB acceptable is not sufficient. You need to combine. For example, if you do green marketing, why not combine with norm activation model? For example, theory of blend behavior and norm activation model. You can have many theories, but not that much. Not sampai 4, 5, 6 theories. Okay, I think 2 to 3 theories are enough when you wanted to integrate these theories. And you have to remember, when you use a certain theory, your framework, the phenomenon on discussion should be related with the concept that was being proposed by the proponent of that theory, kan? Let's say if you use a social cognitive theory by Bandura, there must be the need of elements. What kind of elements? The environmental elements that can change your behavior. And then the individual differences and also cognitive ability. Those are the main tenets of social cognitive theory. All right? So you need to study the theory in depth to understand what are the assumptions of that theory. Can your theory can be used to describe your model? All right? So there are a lot of theories out there, and maybe I can share with you some. Let's say you have no idea, kan? Oh, so what kind of theory? You can use Wikipedia. You don't cite from Wikipedia, but you can refer to Wikipedia to understand the theory. For example, I'm looking at this. Nampak ni? Social psychological theories. No, you don't cite from Wikipedia. You can learn from Wikipedia. Can you see this? A lot of theory. Attribution theory, cognitive dissonance theory, perception theory, social comparison theory, social exchange theory. Ni pun banyak selalu guna. So if you use social media, you can use social identity theory. Social identity is relevant if you study influences or if you study web users who may purchase product based on the recommendation of influencers. Because social identity say that we tend to, we tend to follow people, we tend to feel that people who are influential to us provide us with credible information in order for us to perform some action. Something like that. Okay, you can go to this website, or you can also go to, if you do education, you can go to this website, EduTech Wiki, all right? So you can go to the theory section where there are a lot of theories proposed here. Okay, we are not from education, so let's go to IS. If you are in technology adoption, you go to this website here, is.theorizeit.org wiki main page. Okay, I'm not asking you to cite from wiki. No, you cannot cite from wiki. This is for you to learn, right? So there are a lot of theories that are related to technology adoption. Sangat banyak, kan? Nampak tak? There are lots of them. Lots and lots of them. What else? All right, okay. Okay, what happened if you have, what happened if, let's say, you wanted to search an article, but the article is not available online? For example, you wanted to search takeover intention, and also, nurses. So let's say if you look article that doesn't have a link over here, if Google Scholar provide you a link here, it means that the full text is available. If not from the publisher, maybe the author will go to ResearchGate, will go to academia. Sini tak ada academia. So what happened if the article like this, from Wiley, Wiley is a reputable, what we call as reputable full text publisher. Okay, you just click here, you go to the page, all right? And of course, you wanted to download, then the publisher will ask you to pay, right? And UiTM does not subscribe to Wiley. So what you need to do is, example, I click this one, they ask you to log in using your institution, or you need to pay. Of course, you are not going to pay, right? So what you need to do is you copy the DOI. Can you say the DOI? Every article, journal articles, if it is registered with Crossref, usually a reputable article will have a DOI. What's a DOI? Document, object, identifier. It's like an IC, yeah? Article have their own IC or birth certificate, surat beranak. So you just copy this DOI. Okay. Actually, this is quite illegal. Okay, you don't report me to police. Okay. So you can get the full text easily from here. But this is how to say, I'm not going to recommend you 100%. Let's say if you have no other option of downloading the article, then use this option. If let's say this app is not working, then you have a lot of domain that you can use. Sometimes Sci-Hub not only it define, maybe .fw, can't remember, cannot. If cannot, you just change it, .se, maybe .shop, I don't know, .shop. Or if you have no idea, just type the Sci-Hub alternative. And you can find many pages that can offer, the URL to Sci-Hub. All right, so let's keep this within the four walls, because it's actually illegal to share copyrighted items. All right. If if it doesn't work, then you go to ResearchGate. How can you find ResearchGate? Can you go to my page? Okay, when I introduce myself, I put myself links, Ada ResearchGate, kan? So ResearchGate is like a social media for researchers, for lecturers, for academicians, for PhD students. Usually for academics, they will put their paper there. If they don't put their full text there, you can always request. For example, request. For example, recently I have several requests from, for example, from overseas. For example, from overseas, people from overseas, they are requesting my article. So you can actually request, professors overseas if you can't access their papers. Okay, I think, yeah. Let's go for Q&A. Okay, Nur Fadlin, can you briefly explain? Okay, actually, dummy variable requires SPSS class. So if you have an opportunity to join, I don't think we have sufficient time for us to do SPSS class. Dummy variable relates to nominal data or variables that are nominal in nature. Remember, I tell you about nominal? When we say nominal, you cannot say that female is better than male. You cannot say that green looks better than yellow. So it needs to have a certain identification, because in SPSS, they can only understand in the form of numbers. So how you wanted to classify green, yellow, blue? So that's why you need 001. That's why you need what we call as binary. Okay, I can draw here, for example. For example, ethnicities. Usually we will ask Malay, Chinese, Indian, others, right? So you're going to have, for example, when you do dummy variables, okay, you need to assign. In SPSS, Malay is considered when you have one Malay and other else is 0. Chinese is other 0, Chinese is 1. 1. So you need to have how many dummy variables? Dummy 1, dummy 2, dummy 3. You see here? This one is when you wanted to reflect Indian. Okay, this one is when you wanted to have others. This is what we call as binary. This only applies to nominal data. All right? I cannot technically show you using SPSS, but this is how it works. You cannot use nominal data for your DV. Not recommended. Okay, for moderator, yes, but I'm not recommending as well. It's better for your IB and your DV. All of them are having continuous. All of them are having continuous type of data or interval type of data. Strongly disagree to strongly agree. So these are what we call as continuous data. It is recommended that way. If you have a moderator or if you have a mediator, for example, all of them hopefully needs to have a continuous form of data measurement. Saya tak share video, saya tak share my screen. Ayo. Okay, pernah je I lukis. Never mind. Okay. I hope you can try to understand that nominal dummy variable only exists for nominal data. Okay. For continuous, you don't need to do not dummy variable. All right. Okay. Other questions? Anyone? Perhaps you can use the chat box. Marklin asked, can we just focus on SAM? What do you mean by that? Okay, you have to remember when you run your thesis, you have several parts in your finding section. You have demographics, and then you need to check your reliability. You need to check your normality. Okay, of course, you wanted to test your hypothesis using structural equation modeling. But then before you run your SEM, you also need to run some demographic profiling. Can SEM analyze demographic? Not suitable. You need to have some knowledge on SPSS. Okay, why? Because you need to run some examiners, they don't mind if you have normality issues with PLS, because PLS have this bootstrap technique whereby if your curve, normality curve, doesn't show like a bell curve, it's okay. But some examiners require you to run multivariate normality tests. This is where SPSS is needed for you to check the assumption of normality. All right, you need to have knowledge of SPSS also. Let's say if examiner asks you, okay, you do not put your control variables, or what happened if you have two different groups of respondents? What happened if, let's say, well, there is a need for you to put marker variable and all that stuff? Okay, so you need to have some SPSS knowledge as well, although your hypothesis will be proven through SEM. Yeah, you may not need to do EFA, exploratory factor analysis, but somehow if you wanted to run late response bias like I showed you earlier, or Harman one factor tests, if you wanted to test for common method variance, you need to have SPSS for you to run those tests, and also normality tests using QQ-plot. All right, I've covered that in my notes, in my Google site. For technical details, you can refer to that resources. Okay, most welcome. Other questions? Okay, hope all of you are consistent in doing your research, because right now the DPPS is limiting. You cannot graduate if you exceed how many semester? I can remember. Is it what, 9, 10, 11, 12? Okay, so yeah, please do not approach your supervisor only when it is time for you to submit your progress report. You look at the academic calendar. Okay, there is a academic calendar in your ITM website telling you what week already that we are in right now. Usually the semester will end, the teaching and learning will end at week 14. Usually around that, the PPS will require for progress report. So the thing is that you need to always keep in touch with your supervisor across the 14 weeks, and not just during the end of the semester. Okay, yeah, Ali, SPSS is a must, because without SPSS, you cannot understand what is normality. By using SPSS, you can generate frequency table, the PPQQ plot on normality test. You can look at, various stuff that is not covered by Smart PLS. Okay. You need to keep your momentum going, yeah? Keep on writing, when you read many sources, please do not be obsessed with reading but not writing. Okay? That's why you need to have information search skills. When you write your thesis, try to use a lot of tools. For example, I use my Microsoft OneNote. Everything I jot down there, right? Everything that I read, I put that in my notepad, electronic notepad. Okay? And for referencing, please use Mendeley or EndNote. Mendeley is free, so I recommend you to use Mendeley. And you need to use Mendeley desktop rather than Mendeley. There are two versions. You use the older one, Mendeley 1.9.6. I think that's the best one. Okay, because I can't remember 1.16.8 or 1.16.10. You go for Mendeley desktop software. Okay, because that will help your referencing easier. And you can also install the Word plugin so that when you write your thesis, everything can be generated automatically, your references. Okay, if the expert has validated, thank you, Harina, can you proceed with approaching that person? Okay, as long as not that, as long as the period in which that person retire is not that too long, okay, should be okay, okay? Should be okay if that person have retired less than 5 years. If let's say that person has retired for 10, 20 years, no papers, kan, dah 80 years old, 90 years old, macam Mahathir, dah 20 papers, 20 papers, dah 20 tahun tak buat papers. In that case, you try to avoid. But let's say the professor just retired 2-3 years, but still active as examiner, still write few papers, or maybe have some knowledge, that can be acceptable. Because it's just recently that that person has retired. No problem. Welcome. Okay, you may also try foreign professor. Some of them can be very helpful. You can Google around, search using Scopus, expert overseas. Okay, I also ask my student to find expert overseas, either from Brazil, Portugal, Spain, France. Some of them are very helpful. Okay, I understand many of you hungry. I'm also hungry. Okay. Yeah, any more questions before all of us going for lunch? Anyone? Come on. If not, Fatin, are you there, or is it who else? The host,
Yes,
the
yes,
host
Doctor.
of this
Yeah.
class. So Fatin,
Yeah.
yeah. Should we end this session, or you would like to invite any more input from me?
Oh, no, it's okay, Doctor. We can end the session.
All right. Okay. So perhaps, Fatin, can you share later
Yeah.
on?
Hmm?
Maybe you can ask Dr. Aida to share the recording link, so
Oh, yes. Sure.
I can put the link in my website. So
Oh,
for all the candidates here, I wish you all the best. And yeah, you can access the recording, my notes. You can refer to my Google site. I have key in the chat box, so you can copy that. And yeah, you use that for your own study purposes. Okay. And don't forget to leave good feedback in my video comments as well. All right. So I wish you all the best, everyone. Yeah. And always, my tips is always keep on moving. Because if you stop writing, even for 2 weeks, it's hard to restart. It's hard to start the engine, especially 1 or 2 months. So try to allocate your time. Try to allocate something like 10 hours per week just for writing, excluding reading. Okay, try to allocate. if not like 8 to 10 hours the whole week for you to get your privacy in order for you to write. Without writing, there's nothing for you to show to your supervisor. Your supervisor will not be convinced that you are actually progressing. So that's why, even for my students, it's difficult for me to assist if there are no writing. Although, how much I wanted to defend the student, because when your progress report goes to the meeting, JCAP's meeting, so the dean will ask, okay, so what's the status of the writing? So if the status of the writing is not that good, well, so there are chances that the candidate will be given the AM status. AM1 stands for warning, am I right? AM1, AM2, and AM3 dismissed. So yeah, please take that in mind and please do work very hard and smart in order for you to complete your PhD journey. It's not impossible. Trust me, it's doable. It's very doable. Okay, most welcome. I pray that all of you can succeed in your PhD endeavors. Do ask me anything if you have any questions. Okay, join ResearchGate. You can ask questions from there because if I answer your questions, yeah, I can gain points. All right. You can also gain points also by asking questions using ResearchGate. All right. Okay, everyone, if there are no more questions, inshallah, we end our kuliah with tasbih kifarah dan surah wal asr.
Thank you,
All the
Doctor.
best. Wish you the best of luck, inshallah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, everyone.
See you, Doctor. Thank you.